In the far reaches of the Egyptian desert, far from the tourist paths and postcard pyramids, lies a stillness that few ever witness. The sand stretches endlessly in every direction, golden wave frozen mid-crest, whispering with the wind but revealing nothing at first glance. Yet just beneath these undisturbed dunes, the ground gently swells and sags, subtle shifts that betray the presence of something long forgotten. Faint stone outlines push against the earth's surface like memories trying to be remembered. Walls that once stood tall now rest in quiet surrender, softened by centuries of dust and sun. Hey, the work of archaeology does not begin with picks or brushes. It begins with silence, with watching, with waiting, with letting the land speak in its own time. Archaeologists pause before they touch, studying how the wind moves, how shadows fall, how a single piece of pottery can shift the story of a region. In this desert, the past is not loud. It does not shout from monuments or cry out from engraved names. Instead, it lingers quietly in the texture of eroded stone, in the layout of what once may have been walls, in the alignment of what might have been a courtyard. Time moves differently here. Centuries drift like sand, layering over lives once lived and intentions once drawn in the date. There were hands here once, laying stone, grinding grain, raising children, offering prayers. But their names are gone, and even their structures barely breathe beneath the surface. What remains is the intention, the suggestion of human presence, wrapped in the stillness of abandonment. The sand is not a blankness, but a cover, a deliberate pause in the sentence of history. And to those who listen closely, it reveals more than words ever could. Every layer of sediment is a page, every sun-baked shard of pottery a sentence, every buried threshold a doorway into memory. This is where archaeology begins, not with discovery, but with humility. To kneel here, with the desert pressing in on all sides, is to enter a kind of communion. The earth is not eager to give up its secrets. It requires patience, reverence, and stillness. There is a certain grace in that, in the idea that not all truths must be unearthed quickly, and not all stories must end in clear understanding. In this forgotten corner of Egypt, without tourists, without guides, without spectacle, the land offers its own quiet welcome, not with open arms, but with a hush of old breath held just below the surface. The silence beneath the sand is not empty. It is full of time, of memory, of lives once lived and long since returned to dust. And hey, in the hush of the dunes, archaeology becomes less about digging and more about listening. In the highlands of Peru, where the Andes cradle the sky, immense stones lie pressed against one another with such precision that not even a blade of grass can slip between them. Sacsayhuaman, with its sweeping walls and zigzag terraces, invites quiet astonishment. Each block is a puzzle piece, carved not into simple rectangles but into complex, irregular shapes. Yet they interlock with exactitude, as if the stone itself had softened and flowed into place. These are not bricks. They are boulders. Some weigh tens of tons, others more, and yet they rest together with a gentleness that defies the weight they carry. Far across the world, in the ancient ruins of Baalbek, Lebanon, the temple of Jupiter once stood on a foundation that still stuns engineers. Among its lower stones lies a trilithon, 3 limestone blocks, each over 800 tons, aligned perfectly. Nearby lies the stone of the pregnant woman, estimated at over 1,000 tons, left partially quarried in the ground. No one is certain how these megaliths were moved. There are no records of machines, no wheels large enough, no pulleys or levers found nearby. Just the stones themselves, heavy and quiet, holding their silence. We do not chase solutions here. Instead, we sit with a magnitude. We walk slowly along these ancient lines, fingertips grazing the cool stone, minds lingering on the impossibility. The builders of these walls left no signatures, no instruction manuals, just the evidence of intention, effort, and impossible skill. What tools did they use? What knowledge did they have? The questions surface. Of course, they always do, but they remain suspended, unanswered, and strangely comforting in their mystery. The stonework does not demand explanation. It asks only that we stand before it and notice, really notice. At Ollantaytambo, at Tiwanaku, at the base of forgotten citadels, megalithic construction repeats itself across continents. Civilizations that supposedly never met, separated by oceans and centuries, all seem to possess a similar quiet mastery over earth and gravity. And still, Their stories are mostly lost. What remains is a stone. Without mortar, without steel, without the noise of modern industry, they shape monoliths with such care that erosion has barely loosened them. Earthquakes shake these regions regularly, but these stones hold. Where newer walls crumble, these ancient ones endure, as if humility and harmony was somehow built into their form. This is not the triumph of man over nature. It is the joining of the two. Stone upon stone, shaped by wind, lifted by hand, guided by minds that saw form where others saw burden. The effort is invisible. The result is immovable. To sit beside one of these stones is to feel something slow and immense stirring inside you. Not fear, not reverence, just awareness. Of time, of hands, of gravity, of the deep patience required to place one world upon another and trust it will stay. The stones that shouldn't fit, they do. Not because we understand how, but because someone, long ago, took the time to make it so. And in that, there's peace. In the rolling hills of southeastern Turkey, where the land gently undulates beneath golden grass and olive trees, something impossibly old rests just below the surface. Göbekli Tepe, a name once unknown, now carries a weight of rewriting what we thought we understood about civilization. This place, with its towering T-shaped pillars and mysterious carvings, lay buried for nearly 10,000 years before the dust was gently pulled away, revealing not a village, not a tomb, but a temple. And not just any temple, but the oldest one we know. 11,000 years ago, long before cities, before farming, before even pottery, someone, or many someones, carved limestone pillars from the earth and stood them in circles. Some of these stones rise over 16 feet tall. They are decorated with foxes, boars, vultures, and snakes, animals both revered and feared, their forms etched in sharp relief with tools whose nature we still don't fully grasp. There is no writing here. No roads lead to this place. No houses surround it. It stands apart, a gathering space, perhaps, or a sacred site. It does not tell us why it exists. It only tells us that it does. And in doing so, it questions the entire story of human history. The idea that belief came after stability, that religion followed agriculture, is gently undone in this stillness. We walk the circle in our mind, passing from stone to stone, following a pattern we cannot decode. The two central pillars stand like sentinels, their arms carved flat along their sides, hands meeting at the front. They are not just pillars. They are figures. They are presence. Yet we know not who they represent. How did hunter-gatherers, with no farms, no cities, no permanent dwellings, construct something so monumental? What brought them here, again and again, to dig, to shape, to worship, or to remember? Göbekli Tepe doesn't rise above the landscape in defiance. It curves with it. It whispers rather than commands. Perhaps the most curious part of all is that it was deliberately buried, covered carefully in earth sometime around 8000 BCE, preserved, protected, hidden, as if those who built it knew it belonged not to their time, but to some distant tomorrow. The carvings are not decorative. They are deliberate. Each animal, each abstract symbol, placed with intention. Some believe they represent constellations. Others think they mark seasonal rites. Still others see the echoes of shamanic trance, myth, or memory. But the stones are silent. They neither confirm nor deny. They simply endure. As the wind moves over the nearby hills and the sun casts slow shadows across the excavated circles, there's a feeling that time has folded in on itself. That something from deep prehistory has reached forward, not with answers, but with questions. And that is enough. Göbekli Tepe does not invite explanation. It invites presence. To sit quietly at its edge, to imagine the firelight flickering against its carvings, to hear the footfalls of people who left no names. This is where the wonder begins. The first circle still holds. Far to the south of the Egyptian pyramids, in the emptiness of the Nubian desert, a circle of stones rises quietly from the sand. Nabbed to playa. There are no crowds here, no towering monuments or polished relics. Just a ring of standing stones weathered by time, scattered across a dried lake bed where once, long ago, water pooled and people gathered beneath the stars. At first glance, it is simple, almost accidental. But when studied closely, something extraordinary reveals itself. Order. Long before Stonehenge, before written language, Before dynasties and pharaohs, the people of this land marked the sky with stone. They were nomads, cattle herders, desert dwellers. Yet they watched the heavens with a precision that feels startling even today. These stones do not stand at random. Their arrangement, though modest in scale, aligns with the rising of specific stars, particularly Sirius, the brightest in the sky, whose appearance signaled the coming of seasonal rains to the Nile Valley. The layout is more than symbolic. It is mathematical. It reflects not only a knowledge of the night sky, but an awareness of its cycles, a procession of solstices, of patterns that unfold over generations. Some of these alignments would take centuries to observe. The patience required is staggering. And yet, here they are, stones placed with quiet certainty in the middle of an unforgiving desert. We do not know their names. No text accompany the stones. No tombs, no temples, no altars. Just alignments and silence and the dry breath of wind across the plain. And perhaps that is why Naphtali feels so powerful. It is not built to impress. It is built to remember. The builders were not kings or priests, but ordinary people looking upward, mapping the sky not with paper, but with rock and rhythm and time. What sky did they see so long ago? The stars were the same, yet different, shifted ever so slightly by the earth's slow wobble. Did they sit beside fires and tell stories of the constellations? Did they mark the turning of seasons with song? Did they gather here in ceremony, or solitude, or longing? The stones do not say. They only point outward and upward. As night falls over Naphtali, the desert becomes a mirror. The stars shine with impossible clarity. The air grows still. And the stones, humble in size yet ancient in memory, hold their place beneath the constellations they were meant to echo. No lights, no noise, no movement, only alignment, only presence. To stand in this circle is to feel the quiet precision of ancient thought. Not rushed, not forced, but attuned. There is a beauty in that, in the idea that people once marked the stars with no intention of conquering them, only of honoring their return. Naphtali is not a monument to power. It is a whisper to the sky. Beneath the warm, murky waters of the coast of Gujarat, India, sonar pulses revealed something unexpected. Straight lines, right angles, patterns that don't belong to nature. Just off the shores of modern Dwarka, a city both sacred and legendary, lies a silence wrapped in salt. In 2001, marine archaeologists scanning the Gulf of Kambat stumbled upon what some believe are the remains of an ancient urban center, submerged, silted over, and older than anything the region's history books had prepared for. Underwater cameras captured glimpses, rectangular blocks, grid-like arrangements, objects that resemble pottery and tools. Some dated the structures back 9,000 years, a time before the Indus Valley civilization, before the rise of agriculture in many parts of the world. If true, it suggests that cities, real cities, may have existed when the world still thought in terms of small tribes and scattered settlements. But the sea does not give up its secrets easily. The water is opaque, the silt is thick, and the evidence, like all things ancient and wet, remains both promising and incomplete. Above the surface, Dwarka is tied to myth. It is said to be the city of Lord Krishna, the divine warrior and king. According to legend, Krishna's city was built of gold and emeralds, a palace by the sea that was eventually reclaimed by the ocean after his death. For centuries, it was thought to be metaphor, a parable of impermanence. But when stones were found where no natural stone should be, the myth began to shimmer with the possibility of memory. Did a city truly exist here, before the sea moved in? Or is this another moment where story and soil blur? The coastline of India has shifted over millennia. Whole river systems have dried or rerouted. Temples now sit near eroded cliffs that were once inland. It is not so hard to imagine that what is now sea was once land, settled, cultivated, alive with voices. If so, this city beneath the Gulf is not a miracle. It is a memory drowned. We drift above it now in our minds, as if suspended in slow motion. The outlines of structures seem to rise through the gloom. Roads converge, courtyards open. Pillars stand in dark water like thoughts half-remembered. The silence of the deep does not erase, it preserves. But only in suggestion, not in clarity. There is no excavation here, no crowds of tourists, no shining artifact displayed in glass cases. Just sonar maps, underwater footage, and the persistent pull of wonder. What might have lived here? Who shaped these blocks, carved these pathways, stood at these thresholds before the tide crept forward? The ocean is patient. It waits longer than civilizations. And perhaps it is the ocean, more than anything, that teaches us how to forget and how to remember. A drowned city does not shout. It waits, and the waiting becomes part of the story. Whether the ruins near Dwarka are truly a city, or simply geological coincidence, matters less than quiet hours of contemplation. What matters is the mystery, the idea that beneath the surface, stories sleep. And sometimes, with the help of sound waves and slow curiosity, they begin to stay. In the wide, dry plains of southern Iraq, where dust hangs in the air and the sky stretches like parchment, a structure rises from the earth, layered, worn, yet unmistakably deliberate. The ziggurat of Ur, built from sun-baked mud brick, it stands like a fossil of belief, a staircase to the heavens constructed long before modern memory. Once, its steps were sharp, its walls freshly plastered in bitumen and gleaming under Mesopotamian sun. Now, it crumbles slowly under the same sun, watching centuries drift past like clouds. The ziggurat is not a pyramid. It is not hollow. It is a platform, a series of rising terraces narrowing upward, meant not for burial, but ascent. At its peak once stood a temple, small and sacred, likely painted, possibly draped in linen or gold. There, priests may have lit fires to gods whose names we only half remember. Nana, the moon god. Inanna, fierce and radiant. This was a place where earth met sky in brick and flame. To walk among the ruins of Ur is to feel the press of a world both distant and intimate. These bricks, rectangular, brittle, and etched with the marks of ancient kings, were made by hand. Thousands upon thousands of them, each mold, fired, and stacked into meaning. The ziggurat is not an accident. It is an intention, carried out brick by brick, with a slow determination of devotion. The ground here is quiet now, but not empty. The wind moves through broken doorways and past toppled walls, carrying with it the scent of dust and memory. Clay tablets once filled the archives of the city, letters, prayers, contracts, lullabies. The people of Ur recorded everything. They named their gods and their neighbors. They asked questions of the stars. They baked their words into permanence. And above them, the ziggurat, always there, always watching. It is not hard to imagine flickers of firelight at its summit, the chanting of a priest, the gathering of community below, faces upturned, eyes filled with hope or fear. What did they ask for in those high places? Rain? Mercy? A vision of the divine? The smoldering is no longer fire, but memory. These temples have not burned for millennia, but the shape they hold, upward, layered, reaching, still carries warmth. Not of heat, but of belief. A warmth that lingers in the architecture of reverence. Ziggurats dotted the ancient cities of Mesopotamia, Eridu, Nineveh, Babylon. Each one a center of gravity, a mountain made by hands in a flat land. Their form influenced the sacred structures that followed, pyramids, towers, even churches and mosques. The impulse to rise remains, though the bricks have changed. What is left now are traces. The outlines of rooms, the foundation of staircases, the hollow sound of footsteps echoing in spaces once filled with incense and ceremony. And the ziggurat itself, rising still, though weathered, is a reminder that even clay can outlast kingdoms. To stand before it in the hush of early morning, or under a setting sun, is to feel time gather gently around you. Not heavy, not haunting, just present. The ziggurats still smolder, not with fire, but with a quiet glow of memory baked into every brick. In the arid basin of the Indus River, where the land now lies cracked and hushed beneath the sun, there once stood a city of remarkable quiet order. Mohenjo-Daro, the mound of the dead. But what remains here is not the chaos of ruin or conquest. It is the stillness of structure, the bones of a city that was thoughtful, balanced, and precise. The bricks tell the story first. Uniform in size, measured by a consistent ratio, one that modern architecture would later adopt as standard. These fired bricks, reddish and hard, were made not haphazardly, but according to deliberate codes. Every wall, every street, every step carries their rhythm. Even now, thousands of years later, they hold their edges, resisting time with quiet dignity. The city unfolds in a grid. Streets intersect at clean angles. Drainage systems run along every road, not improvised ditches, but covered channels with access points carefully spaced. Waste was guided out of homes and away from dwellings, as if cleanliness itself was a form of respect. Homes were built with private wells, courtyards open to sky, public baths, large, brick-lined, with steps leading down into still water, suggest not just hygiene, but ritual. Cleanliness is a kind of shared faith. There are no grand palaces here, no towering statues, no obvious temples or tombs of kings. Mohenjo-Daro seems almost egalitarian. Its buildings are modest, but well-planned. Its neighborhoods thoughtfully arranged. Whoever lived here, they organized not by domination, but by design. And then, silence. Sometime around 1900 BCE, the city was abandoned. There are no signs of violent conquest, no great fire, no buried armies, just a slow drift of desert wind, swallowing roads, collapsing roofs, and carrying away names. The disappearance is not dramatic. It is steady, like the tide going out and never returning. The bricks remain. Some still hold the impressions of hands that laid them. They line the thresholds of doorways. They border the public bath. They press against each other in quiet companionship. They do not speak of disaster. They speak of daily life, of structure, order, calm. In one house, a stairway rises abruptly and ends in emptiness, the upper floor long vanished. In another, storage jars rest beside a fireplace, as if waiting for a meal that will never come. There is no poetry written in stone, no declarations of victory, just a calm certainty of design, undone only by time. Some believe climate shifted, that drought pressed too hard, or that rivers changed course. Others imagine disease, or gradual fading of trade. The truth, if there is one, has not yet spoken. Mohenjo-Daro did not collapse. It receded, and in its place, the land stretched quiet again. Today, the site lies exposed beneath a cautious sun. Excavation reveals just a portion of what once stood. The rest remains buried, both to preserve and to protect. The bricks, still aligned, carry no blame. They hold only memory. To walk these streets is to feel not the grandeur of empire, but the intimacy of planning. This was a city that understood water, waste, comfort, and community. It did not build to impress. It built to endure. And for a time, it did. The people of Mohenjo-Daro left no monuments to themselves. But the bricks endure. And in their quiet precision, they whisper a story of a city that lived not for power, but for presence, and then let itself go gently into dust. In the quiet fields of Wiltshire, England, a green hill rises gently above the landscape, broad, smooth, and utterly silent. It is not made of stone. It is not crowned with temples or marked by monuments. It is simply there, as it has been for thousands of years. Silbury Hill, a mound of chalk and earth, nearly as tall as the Great Pyramid of Giza, but softer, hidden beneath layers of grass and thyme. There is no doorway into Silbury, no tomb, no burial chamber, no offerings inside. It is solid, filled entirely with layers upon layers of chalk and soil, placed carefully, deliberately, over what must have been decades of effort. Yet for all its immensity, its presence is subtle. It does not demand attention. It waits for it. From above, its outline suggests a spiral, as if a path once wound upward along its outer slopes. If walked slowly, such a path would offer a long, ascending journey, not toward a summit of revelation, but toward a view of the land itself. Fields, stones, rivers, all radiating out in quiet symmetry. Silbury does not command the landscape. It joins it. No human remains have been found inside. No artifacts to date its purpose with certainty. And yet, its alignment with nearby ancient sites, Avebury stone circles, the West Kennet Long Barrow, speaks of design. These were not isolated monuments. They were part of a landscape of intention, shaped by people whose names are long gone, but whose thoughts seem to echo still through chalk and root. The soil used to build Silbury came from the surrounding land, dug out in great circular ditches and carried, basket by basket, to form the mound. It was backbreaking work, yet it left no inscription behind. The builders did not write their reasons. They only left form. Perhaps it was ceremonial, perhaps astronomical, perhaps agricultural. But perhaps, too, it was a kind of expression beyond utility, an act of shaping Earth into meaning, a spiral without destination, a hill that ascends only to return your gaze outward. Today, the grass is thick and soft. The rain has worn gentle grooves into the sides. Birds nest near its summit. And still, no one knows exactly why it was made. It is an ancient question asked without words. It invites no conquest, no solution. It asks only to be seen and to be wondered at. As you stand before it, the wind brushing across the hill's curved flanks, there's a calm that settles in. You don't need to know. You only need to walk slowly, as if following that imagined spiral path, step by step, until you arrive not at an answer, but at the simple stillness of arrival itself. Silbury Hill offers no legend, no god, no hero, only shape. And in that, perhaps, lies its quiet power, a monument to mystery itself. A place where meaning spirals upward and dissolves gently into sky. Beneath the towering stone of the Pyramid of the Moon in Teotihuacan, there lies a tunnel, hidden for centuries beneath layers of volcanic rock and forgotten intention. When it was uncovered, archaeologists expected emptiness, or perhaps a burial chamber. Instead, they found something stranger, pools of liquid mercury glimmering in the dark. A shimmering river beneath the earth, heavy and toxic, yet beautiful in its strange motion. It does not behave like water. It moves with resistance. It shines with reflected light. It holds its surface like a secret. No written language remains from the people who built Teotihuacan. No royal names, no inscriptions to explain its purpose. The city is vast, mathematically precise, aligned with celestial patterns, its pyramids arranged like the belt of Orion. And beneath one of those pyramids, this quiet tunnel stretches inward, ending in a chamber where mercury still gleams in the dimness of the underground light. Why would anyone pour mercury into such a place? In Mesoamerican tradition, mirrors were portals, tools for seeing beyond the visible world, for communicating with gods or ancestors, for glimpsing the divine. Obsidian mirrors were common, dark and still. But mercury offers something more elusive. It is a liquid mirror. It shivers. It reacts to presence. It reflects not just an image, but a distortion, a vibration, a trembling suggestion. Some believe the tunnel was designed to represent the underworld, a sacred passage for the dead, with mercury flowing like a river between realms. Others suggest it was a ceremonial path, or even a model of the cosmos itself. But no one truly knows. The builders left the mercury, but not the meaning. The tunnel walls were once lined with pyrite and hematite, materials that sparkle and glint in firelight. Imagine walking through it with a flame, your reflection breaking across the liquid surface, the flicker of gold and red dancing across mirrored walls. It would have felt like stepping between worlds. Not a tomb, but a threshold. Above, the Pyramid of the Moon rises in silence. Its massive steps climb toward the sky. It was not built as a burial mound, but as a place of ritual, offering, and alignment. Its summit watches over the Avenue of the Dead, a grand pathway lined with temples and mystery. The entire city of Teotihuacan feels designed for something more than living. It feels orchestrated for memory, movement, and meaning. But beneath it all, the mercury waits. Still, undisturbed. Its presence is not decorative. It is symbolic. The people who poured it there understood its danger and its beauty. They shaped a tunnel that was not meant for the living alone. We walk slowly now, in thought, through that narrow space. Our footsteps do not echo, but we feel the weight of intention pressing in from every wall. The tunnel is not just a space. It is an idea, a passage into belief, a reflection of a world not yet fully lost, but not fully understood. The mercury does not offer answers. It does what mirrors do best. It returns your gaze. It asks, gently, who you are and what it means to see, beneath stone and silence, the shimmer of something meant to last. In the soft, rolling hills of southern Ohio, a shape curls across the green earth, long, deliberate, ancient. At first it seems like a ridge, a natural swell in the landscape. But as the morning mist clears and the trees thin around it, a pattern begins to emerge. A coil, a body, a curve of tail and rise of head. The Serpent Mound. Over 1,300 feet long, it twists in graceful arcs, its form unmistakably reptilian. ending in an open-mouthed oval that seems poised to swallow the sun. There are no stones here, no walls or carvings. The serpent is made of earth, piled and shaped and packed by hands that belong to a civilization long faded from record. Who built it remains uncertain. Some say the Adena people, others a Fort Ancient culture. The dates stretch back more than 2,000 years, and possibly farther. But the origin matters less than the presence. The serpent remains, still, watching. Its alignment is precise. The head faces the setting sun on the summer solstice. Other curves point to lunar events, to seasonal changes, to a sky that was once the only calendar. To walk beside the mound is to move along lines of meaning, where earth and sky were joined not by monument, but by motion. The serpent winds across the ridge like time itself. There are no remains inside it, no bones or offerings. It is not a tomb. It is not defensive. It is a symbol, drawn in 3 dimensions on the skin of the earth. Some believe it represents a cosmic serpent, a force of renewal and death, of movement between realms. Others see in it a celestial map, the curves marking moments in the year when the heavens shift. Still others imagine it as a guardian, stretched across sacred ground, its body marking the place where sky and soil touch. But above all, it is presence, quiet, enormous, and exact. The land around it is peaceful. The trees hum with wind. The grass grows gently over the serpent's form. Visitors walk its edges, whispering, unsure how to speak in its presence. It does not ask for interpretation. It asks only to be followed, slowly, with wonder. In the early morning or just before twilight, the light catches a mound in long, low shadows. The curves deepen. The form becomes more alive. It seems to move, ever so slightly, as if shifting in slow breath beneath the surface of time. The serpent sleeps, but it is not gone. Why would a culture that left no cities, no writings, no armies, build something so large and so precise? Perhaps because meaning does not require permanence. Perhaps because some stories are written not in books, but in curves, in alignment, in shadow, in the way a serpent's body can point to a sun that returns year after year. There are no signs, no answers, only a shape carved into the hill, older than many empires, still intact through flood and frost and forgetting. And yet, the serpent endures. To stand at its head, facing the horizon where the solstice sun will one day set again, is to feel something vast and slow stir beneath the soil. Not fear, not revelation, just recognition. That someone once watched the sky from here and saw meaning in the stars, and drew that meaning in the only way they knew how. The serpent watches still. Coiled in earth, aligned to light, it waits in silence, not guarding, not warning, simply remembering. Off the coast of Pohnpei, in the remote reaches of Micronesia, a city floats just above the sea, or so it seems. Nan Madol, a name few know, a place few still have seen. Built upon a shallow coral reef, this ancient city rises from the ocean in stacks of basalt columns, stone upon stone, as if giants once arranged the landscape like puzzle pieces. Its layout follows no straight grid, no modern plan. Instead, it spreads like a living organism, with tidal canals threading between walled islets like veins, guiding the current in hushed rhythm. There are no cranes here, no quarries nearby. The basalt prisms, some weighing several tons, appear as if they were grown, not transported. Yet they were brought here, somehow, and laid with such care that centuries of waves have not undone their shape. The walls are thick and black, their texture worn smooth by sea spray and time. They hold the weight of forgotten labor. As you drift by boat through the quiet channels, the air shifts. The wind softens. The stones seem to hum. Some are said to be faintly magnetic. Compass needles swing strangely near them. The stones are not carved into perfect blocks. They retain their natural, hexagonal form, stacked like logs or bones, carefully balanced into vaults and passageways. Homes, tombs, ceremonial spaces, all bound by the tide. Nan Madol's builders left no text behind, no written history, no carved records. But their presence endures in structure and symmetry. The islets were once filled with life, homes of chiefs and priests, dwellings built atop platforms above the waterline. A sacred site, separated from the island, floating on coral and purpose. The legends speak of 2 brothers who called the stones into place with magic. that the basalt flew through the air, obedient to their will. A myth, perhaps, but even now, with modern tools and knowledge, the logistics of constructing Nan Madol remain unclear. How were the stones transported? How were they lifted, arranged, kept in place despite the shifting ocean below? The city was meant for isolation, a royal court removed from the island, cut off by design. Power here was not hidden behind walls. It was surrounded by water, accessible only by small boat or careful passage. And yet, it was open to the sky. No roofs remain. The open court seemed shaped for ceremonies beneath stars, for voices echoing across stone and sea. The sea around Nan Madol is not loud. It laps softly against the walls, filling the channels with reflection. At high tide, the city seems to hover. At low tide, the walkways emerge, slick, narrow, and quiet. Fish dart beneath the bridges. Crabs scuttle along the stone. Nature has returned, gently, but not erase what was made. Time here feels layered. Every wall suggests a decision. Every channel a design. Yet the deeper you look, the more it feels like a place not meant to be fully understood. There is a rhythm to its layout, not of control, but of invitation. You follow the canals as you might follow memory, not to arrive somewhere, but to feel something as you move. The compass does not work quite right here. Needles spin or stall. Directions blur. But that disorientation is not unsettling, it is grounding. It reminds you that not all places were built to be mapped. Some were built to be felt. Nan Madol is not lost. It is not a ruin. It is a presence, magnetic in more ways than one. And as the tide flows in, wrapping the stones in reflection once again, the city does not vanish. It simply rests, quiet and steady, between ocean and sky. In museum cases and archaeological storerooms, behind glass or buried in footnotes, there exist objects that do not quite fit. They are not grand monuments or gold-encrusted thrones. They are smaller, quieter things, worn, rusted, unassuming. But they carry with them a gentle unease, a ripple in the expected timeline. These are the tools that shouldn't exist, relics that seem too advanced, too precise, too knowing for the world they came from. The Antikythera mechanism is one such object. Recovered from the bottom of the Mediterranean in 1901, it was found in the ruins of a shipwreck off a small Greek island. For decades, it sat misunderstood, a lump of bronze and corrosion, forgotten on a shelf. Only later did X-ray scans reveal its true nature, a complex system of gears, dials, and inscriptions, a machine that could predict eclipses, track planetary movements, and model celestial cycles with remarkable accuracy. Built over 2,000 years ago, in a world without telescopes or steel bearings, it behaves more like a Renaissance clock than a classical relic. And yet, here it is, real, documented, studied. Not a hoax, not an exaggeration. It turns slowly in the mind like its own gears, quietly resisting certainty. Then there's the Baghdad battery. Clay jars, copper tubes, and iron rods found near the Tigris River. Some believe they once held acidic liquid, grape juice perhaps, capable of producing weak electrical current. Were they batteries, electroplating tools, ritual objects misunderstood through modern eyes? No one knows. The materials are ordinary. The implication is not. Other relics drift through the same mist. A lens carved from rock crystal, buried with a Mesopotamian statue. A globe-shaped object etched with latitude and longitude before longitude was understood. A Roman dodecahedron, its purpose still debated after centuries. Each of these items enters quietly, like a whisper. They do not rewrite history. They lean against it. We do not chase grand theories here. No vanished super-civilizations, no lost world of geniuses. We let the discomfort remain small, gentle, like a loose thread in a very old tapestry. Not enough to unravel the whole, but enough to catch the eye. What these objects share is not their mystery, but their patience. They waited in mud, in shipwrecks, in ruined temples. They passed through hands that didn't understand them, were misfiled, mislabeled, forgotten. And still, they waited until the right light revealed a gear, a residue, a scratch that didn't quite make sense. Perhaps we are not meant to know all things at once. Perhaps the past reveals itself in fragments, unevenly, asking us to pause rather than proclaim. In a world hungry for answers, these tools offer questions instead. Not loudly, not defiantly, but persistently, like an ancient dial turning slowly beneath centuries of dust. They are not anomalies. They are invitations to look closer, to slow down, to sit with the possibility that our ancestors were not just clever in ways we understand, but in ways we have yet to remember. And as we stand before these objects, uncertain, there is a kind of peace in the ambiguity. Not all mysteries must be solved. Some are meant to be held, like a gear in the hand, a charge in the air, a mechanism that moves not to explain, but to remind us how much remains unseen. High in the folds of the Andes, where the air thins and the clouds move like drifting veils between ridgelines, cities of stone cling to the mountainsides. The most famous is Machu Picchu, perched like a crown above the Urubamba River, its terraces and temples shaped with elegance and intent. But it is not alone. Scattered across these green heights are other cities, Vilcabamba, Choquequirao, Lectopata, each tucked into cliffs, wrapped in mist, and quiet with memory. The paths to these places are slow. There are no roads, only narrow trails winding upward through forests and switchbacks, where moss grows thick over ancient steps and orchids bloom beside weathered walls. Every stone placed here was carried, by hand, on back, up impossible slopes, and fitted with such care that time has done little to loosen their hold. In Choquequirao, often called the sister city to Machu Picchu, terraces cascade down steep hillsides, and white stone llamas are etched into the land itself, vast geoglyphs only visible from the air. The city is quieter, less visited, but no less grand. Its plazas open to the sky, its staircases seem to flow from one level of cloud to the next, and the silence is thick, as if the mountain itself is still holding its breath. Vilcabamba, farther still, was the last refuge of the Inca, the place where they retreated after the Spanish arrived, where resistance was mounted, and where the final echoes of an empire were whispered into the stone. Now, it lies in ruins, overtaken by jungle, its walls folding back into root and fern. Yet the spirit of the city endures, visible in the layout, the angles, the stubborn geometry of civilization set into the wild. The Incas did not build for spectacle. They built with respect, aligning temples with solstices, water channels with rainfall, homes with the contours of the slope. Their cities were not imposed upon the land, but integrated with it. Staircases curve with the terrain. Terraces follow the mountain's breath. Architecture here is not separate from nature. It is conversation. At Machu Picchu, early morning fog rises from the valley and moves among the ruins like smoke from a long cold fire. Light cuts through slowly, revealing the soft gold of stone, the neat lines of rooms, the narrow passageways that once carried bare feet across them. No wheel was used to build this. No iron. Just stone, labor, and extraordinary understanding. There is something different about walking these heights. The altitude changes your pace. Every breath is slower. Every step more deliberate. And in that rhythm, the cities reveal themselves not as destinations, but as journeys. Places meant to be reached only by those willing to move slowly enough to hear them. Even the names feel far away. Quechua syllables carried across centuries. The cities don't call out. They remain, cloud-wrapped, as if listening rather than speaking. We imagine the builders, farmers, masons, children, priests, climbing these same steps, resting on the same ledges, watching the same clouds curl across the sky. They did not carve these cities for us. They carved them for time, for sun and shadow, for memory, whether it endured or not. The Andes are not gentle, but the cities and their clouds are. They do not conquer the view. They share it. They lean into it. And so must we. To stand among these stones, high above rivers and below only the sky, is to feel both small and steady, part of something measured not in power, but in presence. The cities and the clouds do not ask for understanding. They offer only the soft invitation of wonder, and the sound of a staircase leading onward. Beneath the desert sun of southern Jordan, where sandstone cliffs glow in hues of rose, gold, and rust, the ancient city of Petra reveals itself not all at once, but in steps. A narrow gorge, the Sikh, winds like a secret through the rock, drawing you in with silence. And then, suddenly, it opens, and there stands old Kazna, the treasury, carved entirely into the cliff face, its columns and statues not built, but born from stone. Petra does not rise. It is revealed. Its temples, Tombs and facades were cut directly into the mountains, shaped with precision and beauty, their surfaces softened by centuries of wind. The Nabateans, who called this place home more than 2,000 years ago, were traders, engineers, artists, people of passage and of permanence. They took the unforgiving land and coaxed it into harmony. Water, scarce and sacred, was their genius. Through channels and cisterns, they gathered rain and spring water, guiding it through stone with quiet mastery. Even now, the remnants of their system remain, carved gutters, stone pipes, subtle slopes that turned drought into life. The desert did not yield easily, but they learned to speak its language. Petra is more than a monument. It is a city, a ghost of one, still echoing with a suggestion of markets, prayers, footsteps. Its structures are not ruins in the usual sense. They are absences, shadows left in stone. The rooms within the cliffs are empty, their walls smooth and silent. No furniture, no frescoes. Just space, defined by thresholds cut with care, as if waiting to be entered again. Doors abound in Petra. High in the rock face, low beside the paths, grouped like quiet villages or standing alone. Some are large and formal, others small and private. But none are open. They lead nowhere now, their chambers hollow or lost. And yet they persist, inviting the eye to pause, the mind to enter. There is a rhythm to Petra's architecture. Not symmetry, but balance. Arches follow niches. Columns flank portals. The geometry of the place is intuitive, organic, shaped by both human vision and geological flow. Time has softened its edges, but the essence remains elegant and exact. The name Petra means rock, and it is fitting. But rock, here, does not mean lifeless. The city breathes through its stillness. The cliffs hold warmth, the stones shimmer at dusk. Colors shift with the hour, salmon to ochre, violet to gray, and the city changes with them. Beyond the treasury, the path continues. Tombs line the hillsides. The monastery, even grander and more remote, waits at the top of a long climb. Everywhere, carved stairs lead upward, narrow and winding, some barely distinguishable from the natural ridges around them. Petra is not flat. It moves in vertical spirals, drawing you deeper into its quiet heart. There are no signs here, no loud explanations, only the presence of something made with care, then left to the elements. Petra does not decay. It transforms, returning, slowly, to the earth it rose from. To walk through its silent corridors, between its sunlit columns and shadowed vaults, is to feel chained to something older than memory, not in confinement, but in connection. These are the chains of Petra, links of water, stone, time, and intention. Unbroken, though worn, you pause at a doorway carved into cliff. The light falls just so across its threshold. There is no sound but wind, no people, no guide. Just a sense that someone once stepped through, and someone might again. Petra does not need to speak. It is a silence that stays with you. A city not built in haste or for conquest, but for presence, shaped by hands that believed in stone and in the stories it could hold. Across the sun-baked plains of Egypt, beyond the towering pyramids and gilded tombs of pharaohs, lie quieter resting places, mastabas, unmarked crypts, and sprawling worker cemeteries. These tombs belong not to kings or queens, but to those who built the monuments, tended the temples, and lived ordinary lives in an extraordinary land. Though their names have vanished, their graves hold stories whispered in silence, stories of dignity, labor, and the human need to be remembered. We begin at the mastabas, flat-roof structures made of mud brick, precursors to the Great Pyramids. They stand modestly, often clustered together near royal necropolises, serving as tombs for nobles, scribes, artisans, and overseers. Within their chambers, simple painted scenes depict daily life, food offerings, family gatherings, servants at work. These images speak volumes, revealing the humanity behind the grand narratives. Many tombs, however, bear no name at all. Workers' cemeteries have been uncovered near Giza and Saqqara, their graves marked only by stones or small mounds. Here lie the hands that shaped history, often forgotten in written records. Yet the care given to their burial, the placement of tools, food, and amulets, shows respect and reverence. These were people with lives, loves, and legacies, now quiet beneath the sands. Archaeologists have uncovered the village of the pyramid builders, workers' homes, bakeries, and cemeteries, revealing a community that lived and died close to the monumental projects. They were skilled, organized, and cared for by the state, contradicting old myths of slaves toiling in misery. The silence of these tombs are profound. Without inscriptions or names, they invite us to imagine, who are these forgotten ones? Fathers and mothers? Artists and priests? Farmers and laborers? Their identity is not lost, but transformed into something universal, the human condition, shaped by memory and mortality. In the shadows of golden sarcophagi, their grave remind us that history is not only the story of rulers, but of the many who made civilization possible. We move slowly through these cemeteries, tracing outlines of ancient bones, remnants of pottery, and offerings faded with time. The absence of name does not diminish presence. It enhances mystery. We reflect on the meaning of remembrance. To be named is to be known, but to be buried with dignity, to have space in the earth, care in ritual, is to be honored. These tombs speak not in words, but in the language of silence and respect. Their quiet presence teaches us about humility, community, and the invisible threads that bind past and present. As the desert wind moves across these sacred grounds, it carries whispers, not of kings, but of people, not of conquest, but of life lived and life remembered in absence. In these nameless tombs, we find a lasting truth. Memory is not only what is written, but what is felt. Not only what is spoken, but what is held. And in holding, we honor. High in the Archaeological Alps, where when carved the snow and silence clings to stone, a man lay beneath the ice for over 5,000 years. In 1991, two hikers stumbled upon his body, face down in the melting glacier, limbs drawn in with tools and furs frozen beside him. Otzi, as he would later be named, emerged from the ice not as a ruin but as a presence, skin intact, organs preserved, even the contents of his last meal held within. Time had not eroded him, it had embraced him. But Otzi is only the most famous of what the Alps conceal. Beneath the ridges and snowfields, within glacier and beneath rockfalls, time is not linear. It waits. Each season lays down a veil, each snowfall a page. And beneath it all, lives once lived, not always seen, but always there. Alpine ice is not still. It flows, slowly, like cold honey. It swallows what falls into it, moving with patience, shifting bones and belongings in a slow migration downhill. A lost hiker today may reappear a century from now, carried gently but deliberately by the glacier's current. In this way, the Alps do not bury. They preserve. The conditions that preserved Otzi were perfect and rare. A shallow dip in the rock, a sudden storm, a quick freeze. His body remained untouched until the modern world had the tools to study it. Tattoos etched into his skin. A copper axe beside him. Worn shoes, carefully crafted. He was not simply a corpse. He was a life pause in motion, a moment, not a monument. Elsewhere in the Alps, other remnants emerge as the ice retreats. Leather satchels, wooden tools, broken arrows, fragments of clothing and food. These are not royal artifacts. They are personal, everyday, and quiet. They tell stories not of empires, but of lives shaped by terrain, weather, and instinct. Sometimes, what the ice returns is no name. A child's shoe, a woven band, a bone smoothed by meltwater. These objects are not grand, but they are whole in their silence. They carry weight not in gold, but in breath that was once drawn, steps that were once taken. The high passes of the Alps were never empty. People moved through them, traders, shepherds, warriors, wanderers. Routes crisscross the peaks, winding through snowfields and beneath glacier that were once smaller, more forgiving. The mountains were not barriers. They were bridges. And yet, the risk was always there. Storms rise quickly. Paths vanish under drifts. One wrong step on ice. One missed shelter. And the cold becomes permanent. But even in death, the mountains hold gently. The ice wraps around what it takes, preserving not just a body, but the world it belonged to. Glacial archaeologists work slowly. With heated tools and soft brushes, they retrieve what the mountains allow. They do not dig, they reveal. And each new find, no matter how small, expands the edges of our understanding. A pouch of medicinal herbs. a flint knife, a strand of hair, all held within the deep breath of the ice. But with climate change, the rhythm has shifted. Glaciers retreat faster now, and what was once preserved begins to emerge more quickly, less predictably. The mountains offer more, but hold less. The secrets they have kept are rising, not as revelations, but as quiet reminders of the life that passed through them. There is something sacred in the stillness of alpine snow, the way it silences sound, the way it erases footprints by morning. And yet, beneath that surface, time endures, not erased, just waiting. To stand in the shadow of a glacier, knowing what it may hold, is to feel both small and infinite. The ice is not only water, it is memory, compressed, translucent, and moving slowly toward the light. The Alps do not shout their history. They exhale it, breath by frozen breath. And in that breath, the past is not lost. It is simply cold and waiting. In the damp heart of Cambodia, where the jungle exhales mist and vines coil like memory, ancient temples rest beneath a canopy of green. The Angkor complex, once the thriving center of a vast empire, now lies partially reclaimed by the forest, a slow, quiet embrace between stone and root. Among its many wonders, one temple draws the eye not for its grandeur, but for the way it yields, Ta Prohm, the temple swallowed by trees. Here, nature does not destroy. It entangles. Massive silk cotton and strangler fig trees have taken root in the crevices of sandstone walls, their roots flowing over carvings like rivers of muscle. Towers bow slightly under the weight of trunks. Doorways are framed in bark. Roofs have crumbled, not from violence, but from the patient push of growth and time. What was once built to last had become part of something living. Ta Prohm was once a monastery, home to thousands of monks, musicians, and scribes. Its walls were etched with dancing apsaras, celestial maidens, their fingers curved like wind, their faces serene. Today, many of those carvings remain. Lichen blooms across their brows. Moss clings to their limbs. But still they dance, not untouched, but unchanged in spirit. Walking through the halls of Ta Prohm is not like visiting a ruin. It is like entering a dialogue. Each stone speaks softly, echoing footsteps long faded. Each root replies, curling through collapsed chambers, lifting flagstones, holding walls that would otherwise fall. The jungle has not erased the temple. It has woven itself into it. Sunlight filters through the canopy in scattered shafts, striking stone and leaf alike. The air is thick with moisture, with a scent of wet earth and old incense. It is not hard to imagine monks passing silently through the corridors, their robes brushing the same walls, their prayers rising alongside birdsong and cicada hum. There are other temples in Angkor, Angkor Wat, vast and symmetrical, dedicated to Vishnu, Ben, with its 100 serene stone faces. But Ta Prohm is different. It is not about scale. It is about surrender. The builders here did not foresee nature's return, but they left space for it nonetheless. And so, the temple breathes. Slowly, through cracks in stone, through hollows where ceilings once stood, through the movement of vines that stretch toward distant light. Even silence is alive here. We step carefully, not out of fear, but out of reverence. Roots have become pillars. Branches hold what beams once did. Ferns spring from the crest of walls. The temple no longer stands alone. It is part of the forest, and the forest is part of it. Some see in this a metaphor, the impermanence of empire, the return of the world to its own rhythms. But Ta Prohm is not a ruin in retreat. It is a collaboration. It does not mourn what it has lost. It simply continues, in a different form. The apsaras carved along the walls have not aged. They smile with the same grace as when the stone was fresh. But their setting has changed. They are now dancers in a green cathedral, attended by rustling leaves and flickering shadows. Their beauty is quieter now, deeper, as if softened by time. The jungle does not ask what the temple meant. It does not try to interpret its purpose or retell its history. It only accepts it, wraps around it, grows into it, and carries it forward. And as we move through these moss-covered halls, we begin to feel the same. Not the need to understand, but the willingness to witness, to walk slowly, to listen. Ta Prohm does not offer clarity. It offers coexistence, a reminder that what is built and what is wild are not always opposed. That time does not only erase, it reshapes, reclaims, renews. Hey, in this meeting of stone and tree, silence does not mean absence. It means balance. And the temple, half vanished, half alive, remains, not in spite of the jungle, but because of it. High on the slopes of Mount Nemrut in southeastern Turkey, as dawn breaks over the Taurus Mountains, colossal heads lie scattered across the gravel, serene, broken, still watching. They once sat atop seated statues that loomed over the royal tomb of King Enchishai, who had himself placed among gods. Now the heads rest alone, weathered by centuries of wind and snow, but their gaze remains unbroken. They look out not over a city, but into the sky itself, watching not a people, but time. These are not the only stone faces that stare through the centuries. Thousands of miles away, half buried in the earth of Mesoamerica, the great Olmec heads rise from the soil. Each carved from basalt, rounded and massive, some nearly 10 feet tall, weighing many tons. Their expressions are calm, powerful, deeply human. They wear helmets, perhaps for battle, perhaps for ceremony. No two are the same. Some believe they are portraits, not of gods, but of rulers, warriors, ancestors whose presence was meant to endure long after their voices were gone. To stand before these faces is to feel a pause, as if something long silent is still listening. The eyes are wide, the mouths closed. The stone does not speak. It observes. It remembers. There are other faces, too, hidden in cliffs and highlands across the world. Moai statues of Easter Island, backs to the sea. Guardian masks etched into mountain rock in Peru. Carved Buddhas once rising from the Bamiyan Valley, their niches now empty, but their presence still felt in the hollow they left behind. Wherever humans shaped stone into likeness, they left more than image. They left intention. What did they hope to capture in these faces? Power? Protection? Continuity? Or simply presence, the desire to remain? Carving a face into stone is a gesture of permanence, of identity held still. It suggests that the one who watches will continue to do so long after names are forgotten. At Nemrut, the heads have fallen but not rolled away. They rest like sentinels around the tomb mound, tilted at different angles, like stars whose alignments no longer match the sky. Snow gathers in their crevices, rain runs down their cheeks. Their silence is not cold. It is contemplative. And in the jungles of Mexico, the Olmec heads are surrounded by green. Roots curl around their bases, vines crawl toward their brows. They were buried for centuries, hidden beneath layers of soil and history, until rediscovered in the 19th century. Even then, they waited, emerging slowly, one by one, their expressions unchanged. No inscriptions accompany them. No legends tell us their exact names. The cultures that shaped them are no longer here to explain. But the stone remains. There is something universal about the carved face. It appears across time, across continents, across belief systems. It is not always divine. Sometimes it is a leader, sometimes a spirit, sometimes a symbol. But always it is a gaze, directed outward, rooted inward. To stand in front of one of these stone faces is not to be studied, but to be reminded that time sees us, that presence lingers, that memory does not always speak with words. We walk slowly past these faces, letting our eyes meet theirs. They do not blink, they do not shift, but they do hold something. Wait, yes, but also witness. They have seen sunrises over empty plains, monsoons washing mountains, civilizations come and go. Their watch is not active. It is enduring. Perhaps that is what draws us to them. Not their size or their mystery, but their steadiness. In a world that changes constantly, a face carved in stone offers stillness. Not as resistance, but as acceptance. And so, they remain, on mountaintops, in forests, along riverbanks. The mountain faces that watch. We do not need to know their names to feel their presence. We only need to slow down, to look back, and to understand we are not the first to pass here, and we will not be the last. Beneath the thick canopy of Central America's rainforests, where howler monkeys call from the treetops and vines coil over centuries of silence, cities lie hidden, not in ruins, but in waiting. For years, the jungle seemed impenetrable. Trees grew over stone, roots cracked foundations, and temples were mistaken for hills. But with the quiet eye of Ladar, light detection and ranging, The veil has been lifted. Through beams of invisible light pulsing from planes above, archaeologists have glimpsed what the Earth has kept secret. Sprawling cities, dense with roads, pyramids, terraces, and causeways, stretching far beyond what was once imagined. Tycho was always impressive, even before the scans. Its stone temples rise above the jungle like mountains of memory. But now we know it was just one part of something far larger, a connected network of cities, towns, and ceremonial spaces. El Mirador, to the north, is older, its structures even grander in some ways, though still mostly reclaimed by forest. What the Ladar revealed was not isolation, but interconnection. Roads stretched between sites for miles. Reservoirs were built to catch seasonal rain. Canals channeled water through lowlands. The forest had not overtaken villages. It had grown over entire civilizations. These cities were not scattered. They were organized. Urban centers, planning, infrastructure. And yet, the people who lived here did not leave behind concrete or steel. They used stone, earth, and time. What survives are foundations, stairways, platforms, enough to see the outline of lives once lived with care and complexity. The jungle is not a destroyer. It is a blanket, a patient guardian that holds what is placed beneath it. For centuries, these cities slumbered in green, their plazas shaded, their temples softened, their stories waiting for rediscovery. The Ladar beams cut through that sleep, but they did not wake the cities. They only reminded us they were there. Walking through Tycho, your steps echo on ancient causeways. Trees arch above, their trunks wrapped in vines. Birds call from unseen perches. The temples rise in silence, their steps steep, their symmetry exact. From the top, the view is endless green, a sea of forest, hiding the rest of what we now know is there. El Mirador is harder to reach. Days through jungle on foot. But here, too, temples rise, larger than they seem, their mass hidden beneath centuries of leaf and loam. The structures are not abandoned. They are transformed. The forest does not erase. It adapts. The people who built these cities understood cycles, of rain, of stars, of time itself. Their calendars were carved into stone, tracking the heavens with startling precision. Their buildings aligned with solstices and equinoxes. Temples face the sunrise. Plazas mirrored constellations. Even now, the geometry of their world whispers beneath the trees. There were rulers here, and wars, trade routes and marketplaces. But there was also ritual, astronomy, poetry. The Maya were not a myth. They were engineers and thinkers, farmers and astronomers. And though their cities faded, their descendants remain, still speaking languages rooted in those same forests, still living near those same stones. To see a Ladar image of the forest cities is to feel the boundary between past and present blur. The lines appear, rectangles, grids, paths, faint but undeniable. Not imagined, not guessed, real. Quiet echoes of design beneath the chaos of roots and rain. The jungle has rhythm. So did the cities. One layered over the other, not in conflict, but in succession. And now, as the scans continue, more cities emerge. Each discovery is not a surprise, but a reminder. The forest is full of memory. To walk these paths, whether in person or in the mind, is to move slowly, not just because of the terrain, but because of the weight of it all, the realization that greatness does not always leave grand monuments. Sometimes it leaves alignment, intention, a buried causeway, a hill that was once a temple. The forest cities of the Maya are not gone. They are present, beneath leaf and time, beneath shadow and scan. And they are still teaching us how to look, how to listen, how to read the geometry of the unseen. Beneath the slopes of Mount Parnassus in central Greece, where olive trees line the valley and the air carries a scent of stone and wind, there lies a hollow in the earth that once held the future. Delphi, the navel of the ancient world, a sanctuary where kings, generals, and wanderers came not to see the gods, but to hear them. The temple of Apollo stood at its heart, but its voice came from below, from a cave, from a cleft in the rock, from the breath of the earth itself. The oracle, known as a Pythia, sat above that fissure, cloaked in linen, her body still, her voice trembling. She spoke in riddles, her answers shaped by the vapors that rose from the stone. Today we call them gases, perhaps ethylene or methane, but to those who gathered here, they were not chemicals. They were spirit, pneuma, the breath of Apollo rising from the underworld. Pilgrims arrived with questions of war, harvest, marriage, destiny. They climbed the winding path to the temple, offered sacrifice, and waited. Inside, in the dim inner chamber, the Pythia would enter trance. She did not claim wisdom. She became its vessel. Her words came slowly, often incomprehensibly. Priests recorded them, shaped them into verse, and passed them along. The answers never gave direction, only reflection. The cave beneath the temple is not vast. It is narrow, dark, lined with worn stone. The air carries a quiet dampness, a smell of mineral and age. It is easy to imagine a whisper here becoming more than a sound, taking on shape, weight, meaning. The echoes are soft. They do not return sharply. They linger, as if listening. For centuries, the oracle spoke. Her presence was both sacred and human. Young women were chosen, trained, honored. Their bodies sat between heaven and earth, their voices woven into the fates of cities and empires. Delphi was not just a temple. It was a threshold, between seen and unseen, between question and answer, between self and something greater. Outside, the theater overlooks the valley. Columns rise along the sacred way. Inscriptions still mark the stones. Know thyself. Nothing in excess. These were not just philosophical musings. They were instructions. To approach the divine, one must be balanced, aware, prepared for ambiguity. The oracle did not offer clarity. She offered openings. Her riddles were not confusion. They were mirrors. A general might ask if he should go to war and be told that a great empire would fall. But whose? That was left to interpretation. And in that space, the wisdom emerged, not in prediction, but in pause. Today, the temple is quiet. The columns are worn. The path is broken. But the cave remains. Its entrance hidden, its depth unchanged. No vapors rise now, but the stillness holds, as if the air itself remembers. Some scientists debate the presence of gases. Others trace the temple's alignment to fault lines, suggest tectonic movement beneath the shrine. But such knowledge does not undo the mystery. It deepens it. Even if the Pythia's trance was shaped by chemicals, the reverence was real. The belief was real. The questions of fate, of purpose, of choice remain real. We walk slowly through the ruins, imagining the footsteps of those who came before. Cloaks rustling, hands clutching small offerings, eyes lifted not to the sky, but downward, toward the breath of the earth, toward the whisper rising from stone. Delphi was not a place of answers. It was a place of listening, of letting the question echo back in another form. The oracle did not speak to tell you what to do. She spoke to remind you that the truth already lived inside you, buried, like the cave itself, waiting for a quiet voice to draw it out. In this sacred hollow, the earth once spoke. And even now, though the cave is sealed and the temple weathered, something of that voice remains. Not in sound, but in stillness, in the space between breath and thought, in the way the wind moves across stone, in the way a question can linger like mist. We do not need the vapor to feel it. We only need to listen, quietly, and let the echo come. In remote corners of the world, tucked into cliff sides and hidden within rocky overhangs, hands reach out from stone, not to grasp, but to remain. At Argentina's Cueva de las Manos, deep in the Patagonian canyonlands, hundreds of hands stretch across the walls in faded reds, blacks, and ochres. They are not painted with brushes or drawn with symbols. They are stencils made by placing a hand against stone and spraying pigment, often through hollow bone, around it. What's left is a negative, a trace, a shadow that doesn't move. A hand without a body, and yet undeniably human. Some are small, children's hands. Others larger, fingers splayed wide. Many are left hands, suggesting that the pigment was sprayed with the right. Some overlap. Some stand alone. There are no names, no dates, no explanation, only presence. These handprints are not limited to Patagonia. Across the world, in the ancient rock shelters of Arnhem Land in Australia, similar marks appear, layered alongside animal figures, ancestral spirits, and abstract shapes. In Borneo, in Sulawesi, in the caves of France and Spain, the story repeats. Hands on stone. Reaching, resting, witnessing. They are among the oldest forms of human expression, some over 9,000 years old, others perhaps 30,000. And yet, they feel intimate, contemporary, as if someone were just there a moment ago, reaching out in the dark. What were they saying? Perhaps they were not saying it all, just mocking. This is me. I was here, not as a name or a power, but as a presence, a touch made permanent, a moment of breath turned into pigment and rock. The placement is often deliberate. High up on cliff walls, deep inside caves, tucked into niches that required effort to reach. This was not idle decoration. It was a decision, to leave a trace, to belong, to be remembered, not as a story, but as a shape. Some see them as part of rituals, initiations, prayers, threshold between life and spirit. Others view them as early records, maps, group identifiers. But the truth is, no one knows for certain. And maybe that's why they endure. Not because they tell us what happened, but because they invite us to feel what was once felt. To stand in Cueva de las Manos is to be surrounded by ghosts, not haunting, but humming. The canyon echoes with wind. The walls curve gently inward, and the handprints ripple along the stone like a silent chorus. They are not loud. They do not shout, but they stay. The pigment, made from minerals and ash, has faded in places, yet much remains. And even where the color is dim, the form holds. A hand is a universal shape, 5 fingers, slightly spread. It crosses time, culture, language. It means nothing and everything all at once. In Australia, some hand stencils are found near water sources or ceremonial grounds. They may have marked the sacred, or the daily, or simply the shared. The stone holds all interpretations equally. There is something gentle about these prints. Unlike carvings of conquest or monuments to the divine, they are quiet. They require closeness. To notice them, you must step forward, lean in, follow the curve of the wall. You must pay attention. And when you do, the space shifts. The cave, the shelter, the canyon wall, it becomes not just natural, but inhabited. You are not alone. You are among those who once placed their hands in that same space, who stood in that same silence, who breathed and pressed and left a part of themselves behind. They did not sign their names. They did not need to. The hand is a signature. We do not know what they thought. We only know what they touched. To see these marks is to be reminded that history is not just kings and wars and cities. It is also a single hand, on stone, in the dark, reaching not for the future, but for permanence. And so they remain, across continents, across centuries, in caves, on cliffs, beneath overhangs, the hands in stone, speaking not in words, but in form, holding still, holding on, waiting to be seen, and felt again, beneath the quiet plains of central Turkey, where soft tough rock ripples in golden folds and stone chimneys rise like frozen flames. A second world lies hidden, not above ground, but below it. Cappadocia is known for its surreal landscapes, but what rests beneath is stranger still. Entire cities carved into the earth, descending layer by layer into cool, structured darkness. The Ringkui is the deepest of them all, plunging more than 200 feet underground, a honeycomb of holes, passageways, stairwells, and chambers, all carved by hand. There are no grand facades here, no temples towering over hills. Instead, there are rooms, simple, deliberate, human, kitchens with blackened ceilings, storage rooms hollowed to hold grain, wine presses etched into the floor, even a school with benches carved from stone. Ventilation shafts run through the city like lungs, pulling air down into the deepest levels. The planning is precise, the intention clear. This was not a cave for hiding. It was a home for surviving. The people who lived here were not creatures of the dark. They were farmers, artisans, worshippers, pushed underground by fear of invasion, persecution, or seasonal threat. When enemies approached across the plains, entire communities could disappear beneath the earth, sealing round stone doors behind them, blending into the quiet of a land. From above, there was no sign. From below, there was a world. Passages narrow, ceilings low, but the flow is smooth. Some tunnels are just wide enough for one person to pass at a time, a defense tactic as much as a design. In places, vertical shafts connect floors like spiral wells, while deeper still, stables and livestock pens reveal that even animals were part of this subterranean migration. Life continued here, fully, if not freely. Walking these tunnels today, the air cool and dry, the silence total, it is difficult not to feel humbled. The rock is soft, easily carved but enduring. Every space carries the shape of the hands that made it. Not decorative, functional, efficient, but there's beauty, too, in the arches, in the quiet symmetry, in the smooth transition between levels. This was not improvised. It was designed. The Rinkui could house thousands of people. It connected to other underground settlements through tunnels that stretched for miles. Some believe as many as 200 such cities of the region, linked like an unseen network beneath the volcanic plateau. They weren't always occupied, but they were always ready. A sanctuary waiting just beneath the soil. Why did they choose to go underground? Perhaps it was the nature of the land, the tough, volcanic and porous, easy to shape. Or perhaps it was necessity, the rhythm of conflict, of empire and resistance. Or maybe it was simply wisdom, knowing that safety is not always up, but in. There are stories, of course. Whispers of early Christians escaping Roman forces, of Byzantine villages avoiding Arab raids. But the tunnels may be older still, their true origins lost in the very stone that holds them. Light moves differently here. Torches once lit the walls. Today, soft electric bulbs cast gentle pools on the floor, revealing the subtle wear of thousands of footsteps. Shadows stretch long in the narrow spaces. Every turn feels like a breath held. There is no noise, no birdsong, no wind, just a faint echo of your own presence, carried down stone corridors. And yet, the place does not feel empty. It feels paused, like a city asleep, waiting for footfall and firelight to return. Cappadocia's surface is surreal, fairy chimneys, cave churches, pigeon towers. But beneath it, the underground cities offer something else entirely, a record of adaptability, a testament to human resilience not in what was built above, but in what was carved below. Survival not through conquest, but through retreat, through patience, through planning. To descend into the Rinkui is not to descend into fear, but into resourcefulness. Here, the earth became shelter, strategy, sanctuary. Not cold, not damp, just cool, just still. You emerge slowly, blinking in the sunlight. The fields stretch silent. The chimneys rise. And beneath your feet, the city remains, not abandoned, not forgotten. Simply quiet, simply ready. An echo of lives lived beneath the surface, shaped by necessity, held in stone. On the Salisbury Plain, under a sky often brushed with cloud and wind, Stonehenge stands, a ring of ancient stones weathered by thousands of seasons, their surfaces worn, their presence steady. Much has been said of the sun here, the way the midsummer sunrise aligns with the heel stone, the way the light travels through the Sarsen archways in golden precision. But the sun is only half the story. The moon, quieter and more elusive, leaves its own marks, not as bright, but just as enduring. Stonehenge's Great Circle is more than a monument. It is a calendar written in stone. Alongside its solar alignments, subtle indications suggest that the builders were watching the moon just as carefully. The lunar standstills, those long cycles of the moon's rise and fall along the horizon, taking nearly 19 years to complete, seem mirrored in the positioning of certain stones and avenues. This was not coincidence. It was observation, refined over generations, carved into place. The moon does not rise and set in the same place each night. It travels, slowly, widening its arc, then narrowing again. The extreme points, the major and minor standstills, are rare and remarkable. To track them requires patience, attention, and time beyond a single lifetime. And yet, the layout of Stonehenge hints that its builders knew. They had watched. They had remembered. In the quiet hours of night, the stones take on a different character. Under moonlight, the circle becomes a theater of silver and shadow. The standing stones cast long, pale silhouettes. The sky opens, and what was once an open-air monument becomes an observatory without instruments. No lenses, no glass. Only stone, horizon, and light. Some researchers believe that rituals were held here not just at dawn, but in the deep hours of the lunar cycle, full moons, eclipses, moments when moonrise align with certain stones in just the right way. The avenue, a long straight path leading from the circle, may have once framed the moon's ascent as well as the sun's. And from the center of the circle, the moon would have risen and fallen in predictable arcs, its glow weaving through the trilithines like a slow-moving tide. Why did the moon matter so deeply? Perhaps for agriculture, the tracking of seasons, tides, planting. Perhaps for myth, cycles of life and death, renewal, reflection. The moon is not constant. It waxes and wanes. It disappears. And then it returns. A rhythm older than any empire, visible to all, understood by few. The people who built Stonehenge left no writing, no scripts carved into the stones. But they left structure. They left arrangement. The circle itself is language, not spoken, but placed. And within that placement, we glimpse their understanding. At night, the plain is silent. Wind moves across grass. Clouds drift past stars. And the stones stand, as they always have, not explaining, but enduring. To sit among them under moon is to feel the pull of something beyond the everyday, not mystical, but meaningful. A kind of measured reverence. Even now, thousands of years later, the moon moves through the sky in the same rhythm. The same phases, the same long breath of the standstill. And if you stand in just the right place, at just the right time, the light still touches the stones in the way it once did. The pattern remains. Stonehenge is not only about alignment, it is about attention. The kind of attention that takes years, even generations, to hold. Watching the sky, marking its changes, translating its slow dance into place in stone. The sun burns, declares, commands. The moon whispers, reflects, waits. At Stonehenge, both were honored, both were known, and in the hush of moonlight, the stones still speak in their own way, not to answer, but to invite, to ask you to stand still, to look up, to notice. And as you do, you begin to understand, the circle was never about power, it was about presence. And the moon, quiet and ancient, still moves through it, a partner in the long rhythm of the sky. In the golden light of dawn, as the desert air still holds a cooler night, the great Sphinx of Giza stays from shadow, not with movement, but with presence. Its lion body, weathered and reclined, faces a rising sun with ageless patience. Carved from bedrock and sitting beside the pyramids, the Sphinx has watched over the sands for millennia. And yet, for all its familiarity, it remains an enigma, a riddle without an answer. And perhaps, just beneath the surface, not the only one of its kind. Some say there's another, a second Sphinx, buried beneath layers of sand and time, resting in silence near its known twin. Theories whisper symmetrical placement, one guardian for the sun's rising, another for its fall. Some old illustrations, long forgotten, suggest two forms flanking an ancient pathway. But no conclusive proof has emerged. Only ground-penetrating radar scans hinting at anomalies, shapes that may be natural or something more. The desert, it seems, keeps its secrets well. Even the known Sphinx raises questions. The face, though regal, is worn. Some believe it was recarved from an earlier lion's head, its scale not quite fitting the massive body. Others note the patterns of erosion, not the sharp lines of wind-blown sand, but the rounded curves of water. Rain, perhaps. Heavy, persistent, from an age when Egypt was not sand, but savanna. If true, the implications are profound. The last time such rainfall touched the Giza Plateau was thousands of years before the pharaohs, before dynasties, before the written word. Could the Sphinx predate Egypt itself? Not by decades, but by centuries, even millennia? There are no inscriptions on the Sphinx to guide us. No builder's name. No date. The dream stele, placed between its paws by Thutmose IV, speaks only of vision and favor, not of origin. The head is human. The body, leonine. The scale, unmatched. It is both guardian and mystery. And beneath it, chambers have been found, sealed, empty, or perhaps never opened. In ancient texts, references are fleeting. Some speak of a watcher at the edge of the desert, others of a lion carved before time. But the language is poetic, not precise. The kind of echo that suggests memory rather than fact. To walk beside the Sphinx is to feel small, not in stature, but in knowing. The stone is pitted, cracked, yet solid. The paws stretch long into the dust. The tail curls behind, partially restored, partially imagined. Restoration has touched it many times, but the core remains original, carved from the very plateau it guards. And somewhere nearby, some believe, lies its twin, unseen, unconfirmed, and perhaps never real. But the idea lingers, a balance in the landscape, a hidden counterpart. The desert has a way of covering what it chooses, and revealing only when it is ready. We do not dig here in haste. We pause. We study erosion patterns, match photographs across decades, read accounts by explorers and mystics alike. Some offer speculation, others skepticism. But always, the Sphinx endures, and in its endurance, invites reflection more than resolution. The mystery is not a flaw. It is a function. The unanswered question is what gives the Sphinx its power. Not as a relic of certainty, but as a vessel of possibility. As the sun climbs higher, its light sharpens the edges of the stone. Shadows fall into the eyes, into the mouth, into the fold of the lion's menere. And for a moment, the Sphinx seems to shift, not in body, but in meaning. We may never know if a second Sphinx lies beneath the sand. We may never confirm the true age of the one we see. But the desert does not demand that we know. It asks only that we wonder. And so we do, quietly, respectfully, letting the ancient stone speak not in answers, but in silence, letting the mystery rest, just beneath the surface, like something sleeping in the warmth of sun and sand, waiting for its time to be remembered. In the fertile plains between the Tigris and Euphrates, where civilization first took root in baked mud and flowing canals, a story has lingered for millennia, a garden so lush, so improbable, it seemed to defy the earth itself. The hanging gardens of Babylon, described by ancient writers with wonder and certainty, have never been conclusively found. And yet, their image blooms across time, terrace greenery rising from desert stone, water lifted against gravity, vines spilling over pillars, and palms swaying high above the dust. Historians from Greece and Rome painted vivid portraits of an artificial mountain of plants, built not by nature, but by human hands. Some claimed it was a gift from King Nebuchadnezzar II to his queen, who missed the green hills of her homeland. Others simply marveled at its existence, a garden suspended in air, shaded with trees, cool by flowing streams, fragrant with jasmine, fig, and cedar. And yet, no definitive trace has ever been uncovered in the ruins of Babylon. Excavations have revealed walls, temples, courtyards, but no unmistakable garden terraces, no water-lifting mechanisms, no vast root systems fossilized in place. Some scholars suggest the stories confuse Babylon with Nineveh, where Assyrian king Sennacherib constructed vast gardens with advanced irrigation. Others believe the hanging gardens were not a place, but an idea, a poetic imagining of paradise in the midst of heat and empire. Still, the descriptions persist. Brick columns supporting platforms. Stone channels carrying water from the Euphrates. Archways heavy with hanging vines. Trees planted in deep beds of soil atop stone. The entire structure engineered to be both beautiful and functional, a cooling sanctuary in the heat of Mesopotamia, where shade and water were more precious than gold. The ingenuity required would have been immense. Water, the heart of the garden, had to be drawn from the river and elevated to the upper terraces. Some envision a chain pump or screw-like device, turned by human or animal labor, to raise water continuously. From there, it would flow downward through a network of channels, nourishing every level, every root. The bricks of Babylon were not just sun-baked clay. They were inscribed, marked, glazed. The people of this land understood structure and aesthetics. Their temples rose in ziggurats. Their laws were etched in stone. Their knowledge of agriculture, canal building, and mathematics was deep. If anyone could build a garden in the sky, it was them. But perhaps the most lasting part of the hanging gardens is not their engineering, but their symbolism. Amid the noise and grandeur of empire, they spoke of softness, of care, of beauty for its own sake. A green oasis in a city of brick, a place where the human urge to create met the natural impulse to grow. Whether real or myth, the garden endures. Artists paint it, poets invoke it. Travelers imagine walking beneath its vines, through pools and columns, with sunlight dappling the leaves above. The idea has rooted itself deeper than stone ever could. Today, the site of ancient Babylon is quiet. The river still flows, slow and brown. Palms sway in the wind. The ruins rise gently from the earth, traces of a once mighty capital. But there is no sign of the garden, no terrace, no stair of roots. And yet, standing there, the air seems to hold something, not presence, but possibility. In every age, we build gardens. We lift them into courtyards, rooftops, balconies. We try to tame the wild, to shape the natural, to keep green within reach. The hanging gardens live on in this impulse, not as a place we've lost, but as a vision we continue to chase. We may never find the bricks. We may never uncover the roots. But the story remains, watered by memory, shaded by wonder, and hanging still in the collective imagination. A garden that grew not just from soil, but from longing, and that still blossoms, quietly, in the mind. In the open plains of northern Tanzania, where dry grass waves in the wind and acacia trees lean gently toward the sun, there's a quiet power pressing to the earth, not by wheels, not by sandals, but by bare feet. At Litoli, a bed of hardened volcanic ash holds a trail of footprints nearly 3.6 million years old. 3 individuals walked here once, across soft ash before it cooled, their steps captured by chance, then buried for millennia under layers of sediment and time. Today, we kneel beside these faint impressions and find not fossils, but presence. The footprints are small, human in shape, but not quite ours. They belong to Australopithecus afarensis, an early hominin, upright and curious, long before tools or language as we know it. And yet, their feet move with the same rhythm we recognize in ourselves. Heel to toe, one step, then another, not running, walking. The ash, spewed from a nearby volcano, had settled into a fine, wet surface, perfect for capturing detail. The rain fell soon after, then silence and burial. Thousands of years passed. The footprints waited, not erased, not forgotten, just hidden, until the land opened its memory to careful eyes in the late 1970s. The trail stretches for nearly 30 meters. 2 individuals walked side by side. A third, smaller figure stepped in one of their tracks, perhaps a child, perhaps walking hand in hand. There is no destination marked, no sign of panic or urgency, just direction, just motion. And in that motion, a moment, preserved in volcanic dust, so ancient that words fall short. Litoli is not a monument. There are no stone carvings, no offerings, no structures. Just prints, pressed lightly into the earth, whispering of bodies that moved under the same sky, with the same sun warming their backs. They did not know they were making history. They were simply walking, perhaps toward water, perhaps away from fire, perhaps nowhere in particular. We sit beside those prints now, not as scientists alone, but as descendants. Not because they are us, but because they carry something familiar, the desire to move, to stay close, to step forward. The stride is steady, the rhythm balanced. There are no marks of hesitation, only presence. Around Litoli, the land is dry and wide. Wildlife moves in the distance. Birds circle overhead. The earth feels ancient, but alive. Here, in this quiet space, history stretches further than most places can reach, not in written record, but in the impression of a foot left in ash. What do we see in these steps? Evidence, yes, a bipedal movement of early hominins, but also intimacy. A glimpse of life before names, before myth, before walls. A shared path across fragile ground. A journey both brief and eternal. The volcanic eruption that created this canvas was violent. Ash darkened the sky. Silence followed. But what remains is not the eruption. It's the aftermath, the soft impact of feet, lighter than fire, more enduring than flame. Litoli's footprints are protected now, covered again to keep them from erosion. But their imprint has already reached beyond their shallow depth. They speak to something older than civilization, and yet closer than expected. No tools were left behind. No bones. Just a story told by feet in motion, steps that cross a surface, then stopped and never returned. There is something profoundly humbling in their simplicity. No decoration, no monument, only the act of walking. And in that act, a connection, across continents, across time, across species. We do not need to imagine who they were. The prints tell us. They were here, together, moving through a world we no longer know, but can still touch, if only for a moment, if only with awe. At night, when the stars gather above the plains of Litoli, the wind moves through the grass in slow waves. The land rests, but the memory remains, quiet, enduring, held in the earth like a whispered beginning. A path started long ago, still unfolding with each step we take. In quiet caves and sunlit dig sites across the world, bones rise from the earth like whispers, fragments of skulls, curved ribs, teeth worn by time. They are not loud discoveries. They do not arrive with drama. They are lifted gently, brushed softly, catalogued with care. And yet, they have the power to shift our understanding of who we are. Each bone is not just a piece of a body, but a note in the long song of human history, one that is constantly being revised, reframed, rediscovered. In the Denisova cave of Siberia, a single finger bone, small, broken, unremarkable at first glance, revealed a new kind of human. Not Neanderthal, not modern Homo sapiens. Something else. Something related, but distinct. The Denisovans. From a single bone, an entire branch of humanity emerged. They lived, they bred, they wondered. And traces of their DNA remain, quietly woven into the genes of people today. In the forests of Indonesia, on the island of Flores, archaeologists uncovered a set of tiny bones. A skull the size of a grapefruit, teeth delicate and unfamiliar, a body small, but upright. They called her Homo floresiensis, the Hobbit. Once thought impossible, her existence suggested a lineage shaped not by growth, but by island life, isolation, and slow adaptation. She stood just over 3 feet tall, yet her presence expanded the landscape of our species. Elsewhere, in the cave of South Africa, came the discovery of Homo naledi, a species with a strange mix of traits. Modern hands and feet, but a small brain. Bodies placed deliberately in chambers deep underground, suggesting ritual behavior. Intelligence in a form we didn't expect. Their bones told us that the line between ancient and advanced is not as straight as we once thought. These are not disruptions. They are revelations. Not chaos, but clarity. The story of human evolution is no longer a simple ladder, one species giving rise to another in a clean, upward march. It is a tangled tree, its branches crisscrossing, overlapping, intertwining. Bones are the leaves that fall, one by one, revealing the shape of the tree below. Each new find reshapes the timeline. Not because we were wrong, but because we were incomplete. The past is not fixed. It is layered, and those layers are deep, delicate, and often full of surprises. The bones come from caves, from cliff sides, from forgotten graveyards. Sometimes they arrive through erosion, through chance, through the quiet persistence of those who spend decades looking for nothing until something appears. A tooth, a jaw, a sliver of pelvis. Small things that hold vast echoes. And always, we return to them with care. We scan, we test, we measure. But beyond the science is something else, something quieter. A recognition. These were lives. Not statistics, not data points. Individuals who breathed, moved, rested. Their bones are not just fossils. They are reminders. A femur reveals how far someone walked. Teeth tell of diet, of season, of hardship. A healed fracture shows care. A buried body shows memory. And slowly, the fragments gather meaning. It is not the newness of discovery that matters. It is the patience. The way knowledge builds not in leaps, but in layers. One bone at a time. One breath at a time. To hold an ancient bone, even in thought, is to feel the presence of time made tangible. The past is no longer abstract. It is weight, shape, texture. It is something you can cradle in your hands. In museums and research labs, behind glass and within drawers, these bones rest not as trophies, but as teachers. They do not tell one story. They tell many, each one complex, each one incomplete. And together, they remind us that humanity is not a single line. It is a chorus, a movement, a drift across continents and climates, shaped by need, by chance, by change. We do not dig to prove. We dig to understand. And every discovery is not an end, but an opening. A window into how we came to be, not just as Homo sapiens, but as part of a long, branching family of beings who walked upright, shaped tools, buried their dead, and left behind their bones as breathless echoes. The bones that rewrite time do not shout. They do not demand. They simply exist, waiting to be seen, to be recognized, to be remembered. And in that remembering, we continue the story, not with certainty, but with wonder, not with answers, but with care, carved not with bricks or mortar, but with patience and belief. The rock temples of Ellora and Ajanta stand hidden in the stone folds of the Indian landscape, sanctuaries not built upon the earth, but carved out of it. They were not constructed from pieces, but revealed by subtraction. Stone was removed day by day, century by century, until sacred spaces emerged, halls, shrines, staircases, deities, not added to the land, but drawn from it. At Ellora, the Kailasa temple is a centerpiece, an entire monolithic structure hewn from a single cliff. It is not small. It is a cathedral of stone, complete with columns, towers, and sculpted stories. But what stuns more than its size is its silence. The fact that it was shaped from above, down through the rock, with no scaffolding, no machinery, just vision and time. Every surface tells a story, and yet it whispers. Nearby, the Ajanta caves curve along a horseshoe bend of river and forest. They are older, more secluded, cut into a rock face above the Wagga River. Their facades are modest, but their interiors open into sweeping chambers painted with the life of the Buddha. The light fades as you enter, and with it, the sense of time. Inside, murals flicker in soft pigments, reds, blues, golds, telling of compassion, trials, renunciation, and peace. Some are weathered, others remain vivid. All are quiet. These sanctuaries were not for crowds. They were for seekers, for monks in retreat, for pilgrims in silence, for those whose prayers echoed not upward, but inward. The walls breathe softly with centuries of devotion. You feel it in the coolness of the air, in the stone that gives nothing but carries everything. The carving of these temples was not rushed. Generations may have passed before one was completed. The labor was not just physical. It was spiritual. To chisel stone is slow work. To do it with reverence is slower still. But in that slowness, purpose finds form. The sculptures within Ellora depict gods in movement, Shiva dancing, Vishnu reclining, Parvati watching. Their bodies emerge from the stone with a fluidity that contradicts the material. At Ajanta, the Buddha sits in many forms, teaching, meditating, lying in final repose. His eyes lowered, his mouth still, his presence calm, carved into the darkness. There is no noise here, no chant, no ceremony. Only the architecture of stillness. Each step down into the caves muffles the world above. The deeper you go, the more your senses attune. To the texture of stone, to the echo of your own breath, to the feeling that these spaces were never truly abandoned, only resting. The rock is volcanic, layered, cooperative, but it still resists. Every sculpture, every arch, every painting was a conversation between tool and stone. And yet, these places do not feel labored. They feel inevitable, as though they were always waiting beneath the surface, needing only time and belief to be revealed. The Ajanta caves date back over 2,000 years. Ellora, nearly as long. Their endurance is not just structural, but emotional. They hold the residue of prayer. Not just what was said, but what was meant. Pilgrims still come, not in large numbers, not with fanfare, but quietly, to stand before the carvings, to sit on the floor where monks once meditated, to run fingers over ancient stone and feel something pulse beneath it. Not energy, perhaps, but presence. A weight that is not heavy, only deep. Outside, the forest hums. Water flows in the distance. But inside the rock temples, the air is still. Cool, dry, close. Not claustrophobic, but containing. As if the stone has drawn a circle around time and held it there. These are not ruins. They are not broken. They are not silent because they are forgotten. They are silent because they were built for silence. To visit them is not to look back. It is to step into a long breath that began before you and will continue after. A breath made of prayer, of patience, of stone shaped into sanctity. And as you leave, stepping back into sun and noise and sky, the weight of that breath lingers, not to burden, but to remind that deep within the earth, carved by human hands and timeless longing, sacredness still dwells in the stone, quiet, waiting. Oh, high in the Bolivian Andes, nearly 12,000 feet above sea level, there's a place where the sky comes down to rest upon the earth. Salar de Uyuni, the world's largest salt flat, stretches endlessly in all directions, an ocean of white that turns to light. In the dry season, it gleams under the sun like glass. In the rainy months, a shallow film of water collects across its surface, transforming it into a perfect mirror. The horizon vanishes. The sky repeats. And those who walk across it seem to float, not on land, not on air, but on the boundary between the two. Hey, Earth does not reflect the heavens. It becomes them. Clouds glide across the surface. Stars double at night. The moon hovers above and below. It is a place where light is quiet and space folds inward, where movement slows and each step feels more like thought than motion. But beneath this dreamlike surface lies a deeper story, one of time, geology, and forgotten civilizations. Salar de Uyuni is what remains of an ancient inland sea, Lake Minchin, which covered much of the region tens of thousands of years ago. As the water evaporated, it left behind layers of salt and memory. Beneath the crust, scientists have found not only lithium and minerals, but signs of prehistoric shorelines, buried tools, and fossilized algae. Evidence that this place, now so still, once teemed with motion, with life. Along the edges of the flats rise the remains of islands. Isla Incahuasi, covered in towering cacti, is not a mirage, but a crest of ancient volcanic land, once surrounded by water. Standing atop it, the salt stretches outward like a frozen sea, and you begin to understand how ancient this landscape truly is. This is not emptiness. It is memory, preserved in salt and light. Nearby, at Liker and Cocasa, quiet villages nestle at the base of extinct volcanoes. Within them, ceremonial sites and stone structures speak softly of earlier peoples, communities who navigated this terrain not with mirrors and maps, but with stars and wind. Some left behind burial towers, others altars carved into the rock. The sun and moon guided their lives, just as they now dance in reflection across the salt. During the rainy season, when the mirror returns, it is easy to believe in other worlds. The flats become a living canvas, the kind that holds no frame. Vehicles appear to float. Footsteps ripple outward like sound. The clouds drift beneath your feet. And in this surreal symmetry, something ancient stays, not a voice, but a sensation, that the past is not buried. It is spread out before you, vast and white and waiting. Even the stars seem closer here. At night, when the air grows cold and the winds settle, the Milky Way spills across the sky and across the salt. There is no difference. You lie down and see galaxies above and below. It is not disorientation. It is surrender. The earth does not hold you. It lets you drift. Scientists come for the geology. Tourists come for the photographs. But the Salar offers something else, something quieter, the sense that you are walking across a place shaped not just by time, but by forgetting, that this landscape, so wide and reflective, has erased nothing. It has simply held everything still. There are no ruins here in the traditional sense, no temples or towers, but there are marks, small, persistent signs of presence. Rock circles, aligned cans, lines carved into the crust, their meanings long faded, their intent still lingering. Not monuments, but moments. To float across Salar de Uyuni is to move through a space where distance feels irrelevant, where what's near and what's far shift with each step. You become small, then infinite, then small again. And all the while, the land says nothing. It reflects, and perhaps that is its power. Not in what it tells you, but in what it shows you, your own silhouette against the stars, your shadow mingled with the sun, your body is both presence and passing. The salt is thick beneath your feet, crusted in hexagonal patterns shaped by evaporation and wind. It crunches softly. It remembers the lake, the volcano, the storm. It holds within it the minerals of ancient seas and the quiet hope of rain. And when the water comes, thin and clear, it lifts the light again. The mirror returns. And you are nowhere and everywhere, and briefly, beautifully reflected. In the low, mist-laced fields of Aberdeenshire, Scotland, where the hills are soft and the winds constant, time often feels like a quiet companion. But beneath this wet grassland, in a stretch called Warrenfield, something ancient stays. Something older than the written word, older than the plow, older than the idea of a calendar as we know it. In 2013, archaeologists announced a remarkable find, a series of 12 pits carefully dug and aligned, not with the sun, but with the phases of a moon. Radiocarbon dating placed them at nearly 10,000 years old, created in the Mesolithic era by hunter-gatherers. This site may represent the oldest known lunar calendar in the world. There are no monuments here, no great stones or towering pillars. Just shallow impressions in the earth, visible only from above or with the tools of careful measurement. And yet, these simple hollows hold profound meaning. Each pit seems to correspond to a lunar month, a cycle of the moon. Together, they track a year. But more than that, they align with the midwinter sunrise. Once a year, light would return precisely to a mark point, resetting the sequence. A fusion of moon and sun, darkness and light. In this quiet field, we imagine a different rhythm of life. A time before agriculture, when survival meant movement, and memory was held in the land. The people who dug these pits did not do so casually. They observed. They waited. They watched the moon rise and wane, the shadows stretch and shrink. They read the sky like scripture. Perhaps they used a calendar for hunting, to track the migration of animals, the blooming of plants, or for ritual, to mark beginnings and endings, to remember the dead, to predict the return of light in the darkest days of the year. There are no carvings to explain it, no tools left behind to interpret, only the geometry of patience. The Scottish landscape adds to the atmosphere. The sky is often heavy, draped in cloud. Rain softens the ground, mutes the colors. The grass rolls over ancient memories. And yet, standing here, you begin to feel it, the awareness of time not as numbers or dates, but as a cycle, a flow. Days measured by light, months by reflection, years by renewal. Other calendars would come, Egyptian, Mayan, Roman, intricate, mathematical, carved in stone and codified in law. But this one whispers. It asks us to remember that even in prehistory, people were not without knowledge. They understood pattern. They understood change. They lived in harmony with the moon, and they marked its passing not with machines, but with earth. The Warrenfield pits are shallow now, overgrown in places, but their alignment remains. When the moon rises over the field, when winter approaches and the sun returns to its lowest point, the connection still holds. Thousands of years later, the light touches the earth just as it did then. There is no visitor center here, no great monument to draw the eye. Only the idea that time was once counted by shadow, that before calendars were printed or coded into phones, they were drawn into soil, that before history was written, it was watched. We do not know the names of those who built this lunar clock. We do not know their beliefs, their languages, or their faces, but we know they looked up. We know they saw the same moon we see, and we know they shaped the ground in response. That is enough. So we walk through the damp grass. We feel the wind curl around us, and we remember that time has always been here, waiting to be noticed, waiting to be marked, one pit at a time. In the deep, translucent waters of the Greek island of Antikythera, where the Aegean Sea hides shipwrecks like forgotten thoughts, divers once stumbled upon something impossible. It was the year 1901. Amidst amphorae, bronze statues, and marble torsos, they found a lump of corroded metal, small, fractured, and unassuming. It would take decades for its true nature to be revealed. This was the Antikythera mechanism. Now housed in fragments in a museum in Athens, the device defies expectation. It contains more than 30 bronze gears, some no wider than a fingernail, with teeth so precise they rival 18th century clockwork. Its design is compact, layered, and intricate, and its purpose? To predict celestial movements, solar and lunar eclipses, planetary phases, even the timing of Olympic Games. It is, in essence, a mechanical cosmos, an ancient Greek computer built 2,000 years ago. We pause to absorb that. Long before the Renaissance, before Newton's laws and Galileo's telescope, someone, or some group, understood not just astronomy, but gear ratios, cycles, calendars, and mechanical modeling. This was not myth or metaphor. It was calculation expressed through metal and motion. And then it sank. For centuries, the mechanism slept beneath the sea, its copper turning green with corrosion, its secret sealed in salt. The ship that carried it, a Roman cargo vessel, broke apart on the rocks, and with it, perhaps, an entire lineage of knowledge was lost. How many other such devices were made? How widespread was this technology? Who commissioned it? Who could read it? These questions swirl like ocean currents, circular, slow, never quite settling. The Antikythera mechanism shows not only what was known, but how easily knowledge can vanish. It asks us to imagine a library without paper, a philosophy in gears, a science built to turn. Its dials are inscribed with Greek letters, faint and fragmented. Some track the Metonic cycle, a 19-year lunar period. Others reference the Saros cycle, used to predict eclipses. A small knob could be turned, and with it, the heavens moved. Not symbolically, but mechanically. This was not just a toy or trinket. It was built with intention. And yet, no texts mention it. No schools describe it. It was found by accident. It endured by chance. The wreck itself lies scattered across the seabed, its bones rusted and splayed. Each year, divers return, finding new shards, new hints. Perhaps more gears lie buried in sediment. Perhaps other machines rest in deeper waters, unnamed and untouched. There's something poetic in that, the idea that knowledge does not disappear. It submerges. It waits beneath silence. It rusts, but it remembers. The sea becomes not just a grave, but an archive. In a quiet room, under soft lights, the Antikythera fragments are displayed, like a puzzle with too many missing pieces. Yet even so, scientists and historians have reconstructed models. Replicas now turn gently on museum shelves, their brass teeth mimicking the motion of forgotten hands. You watch them rotate. The sun moves, the moon advances, and you feel time in a different way, not as numbers or dates, but as interlocking movement. Predictable, poetic, precise. Who built it? A philosopher? A mathematician? A shipbuilder? A priest? We do not know. Perhaps all of them at once. Perhaps none. The mechanism does not name its maker. It just turns. And in that turning, it offers something rare, a glimpse not of mystery, but of memory, of what humans once knew, and what the sea still holds. A reminder that even lost knowledge leaves traces. That gears, once set in motion, remember the rhythm they were built to follow. We leave the wreck behind, rising slowly through blue water. Sunlight filters down. The waves above shimmer like dials. And somewhere beneath, a gear clicks gently into place, even if no one hears it. In the arid highlands of Iran, where wind moves through dust and mountains cast long shadows over the earth, there are places where fire never dies. These are not metaphors, but literal flames, kept alive for centuries, flickering behind ancient walls, fed by ritual, devotion, and memory. We enter the realm of Zoroastrian fire temples. Zoroastrianism, one of the world's oldest monotheistic religions, places fire at its center, not as a god, but as a symbol. Fire represents purity, light, the divine order of truth, or Esha. To look upon a sacred flame is to look upon an unbroken connection to creation. And so, fire was not simply lit. It was invited, honored, and protected. These temples, called a Tashkadeh in Persian, were built with intention. Their walls thick, often domed, designed to shield the flame from wind and impurity. The sacred fire, a tashbarum, was not any flame. It was created by combining the purified essence of multiple fires, from a baker's oven, a potter's kiln, lightning strikes, funeral pyres. Each source was cleansed through intricate rituals. Only then did the eternal fire begin. We step softly into a fire temple. The air is quiet. Stone floors echo underfoot. There is no statue, no idol, just a flame, enclosed in a bronze or silver holder, dancing gently, never still, never consumed. A priest, called a mob, tends it. He wears white garments, symbolizing spiritual cleanliness, and uses a special ladle to feed the fire. Only dry, clean wood is allowed. Only silence or prayer surrounds it. There are three main grades of fire in Zoroastrianism: a tashdadga, The lower grade, kept in homes, attaché duran, for community worship, and attached barum, the highest, housed in major temples. To establish an attached barum is no simple task. The preparation can take years. It is a convergence of science, ceremony, and sacred care. The temples were once widespread across Persia, into Central Asia, even touching India. But time has narrowed their reach. After the Islamic conquest of Persia, many fire temples were destroyed or converted. Zoroastrians became a minority. Some fled to India, becoming the Parsis, where fire temples still quietly glow in cities like Mumbai and Advada. And yet, even in Iran, some ancient fires still burn. In Yazd, a city that feels carved from sun and dust, a flame has reportedly burned for over 1,500 years. Visitors remove their shoes. They stand behind glass, and they watch. There's something deeply human about this, the preservation of fire. In the earliest caves, humans gathered around flame for warmth and story. In temples, it became sacred. In science, it became energy. But here, in this old Persian structure, it is all of those things at once, and more. It is continuity. We move through the architecture. The domes collect smoke, releasing it gently. The air is dry, scented faintly with cedar. Inscriptions in a Western script curve across stone. There is no rush. The flame teaches patience. The rituals are equally slow. Fire is cleaned. Prayers are recited, sometimes in the dead of night. The firekeeper wears a face covering to avoid breathing on the flame. Every movement is intentional. Every gesture acknowledges the fragility of what endures. And beyond the temple walls, the philosophy of Zoroastrianism lingers. It is a path of dualism, good and evil, light and darkness, truth and lie. The fire does not destroy the dark, it simply shines in it. Like memory, like hope, we reflect on what it means to keep a flame alive, not just physically, but across generations. To teach your children to tend the same fire, to protect it through war, migration, and silence. To keep it clean in a world that often forgets what matters. There are many wonders in archaeology, great pyramids, lost cities, ancient machines. But here, in a quiet temple in the Iranian plateau, is perhaps something more elusive, an unbroken ritual, a living past, a slow-burning thread between what was and what still is. We leave the temple with a flame behind us, still dancing, still untouched by time, and we wonder, what do we keep burning in our own lives? What do we protect in silence, away from noise and speed? In the dark, a single flame can feel eternal. In the realm of archaeology, not all mysteries lie scattered across the earth. Some remain hidden behind doors, sealed, locked, untouched by air for centuries or even millennia. These are not forgotten places, but remembered ones, remembered because they remain closed. The silence behind such barriers hums with possibility. We begin with a boy king, Tutankhamun. His tomb, discovered in 1922 in the Valley of the Kings, stunned the world. Gold, chariots, linen still soft, sense of ancient resins. But even here, mystery lingers. Behind the north wall of the burial chamber, scans once hinted at a hidden space. Perhaps another chamber, perhaps the resting place of Queen Nefertiti. Excavation paused. Debate rose. The wall remained sealed. Time waits. We move next to southern India, to the Padmana Baswami Temple, a structure so rich in lore that legend and inventory blur. In 2011, 6 vaults beneath the temple were opened by court order. Gold flowed forth, necklaces meters long, coins by the sack, jewels gathered through centuries of devotion. But one chamber, Vault B, remained closed. Its door is unlike the others. No handle, no latch, no lock. Just a massive iron slab sealed shut with tradition. Legends say it is guarded by serpents. Others say it holds divine wrath. Still others, only more treasure. What is certain is this: no human hand has opened it in living memory. And none days now. We drift through these sealed places slowly. The silence around them is not empty, it's dense. It is made of respect, fear, reverence, superstition. It is cultural, spiritual, archaeological, a silence we do not dare to break. Other doors echo with similar mystery. In China's first emperor's tomb, the one guarded by the terracotta army, the central chamber remains untouched. Reports suggest a map of his empire lies within, with rivers of mercury flowing through miniature mountains. But to open it would risk collapse. And so the chamber remains sealed, its contents unconfirmed, its myth intact. Doors, when left unopened, become more than architecture. They become ideas. They hold not just what's inside, but everything we imagine could be. We reflect on what this says about us, that sometimes the act of not opening is the deepest form of engagement. That mystery, when preserved, holds more than answers ever could. A sealed chamber is like a sentence left unfinished. It invites wonder. It lets the imagination breathe. In our world of relentless exploration, it is rare to encounter a place where we say, "Not yet, not now." There is beauty in that. In Japan, the imperial Kofun tombs, massive keyhole-shaped mounds, are off limits. Not to archaeologists, not to historians, even to the government. They remain untouched by official decree. Sacred, sealed, silent. We stand at the edge of one such site. Wind rustles through trees. Stone steps lead nowhere. And behind the gate, under earth and time, lies someone who shaped a kingdom and is now watched by no one. It's easy to want the door to open, but there's also grace in leaving it closed. Not everything must be solved. Not every lock must be picked. Sometimes history speaks loudest through what it withholds. And so we leave these thresholds as we found them, sealed. Still, the echoes inside can wait. Beneath the bright sky of Egypt, where pyramids rise and tourists gather, there are whispers of something deeper. Not higher, but lower. Beneath the sand, beneath the stone, beneath what we think we know, we drift toward Hawara. Far from the grandeur of Giza, Hawara lies quiet, a weathered site in the Fayum oasis south of Cairo. Once, it held a pyramid built by Pharaoh Amenemhat III. But it is not the pyramid that draws the imagination. It is what was said to lie beneath it, a place spoken of in hushed tones, a place called the Labyrinth. The ancient historian Herodotus, writing in the 5th century BCE, described a marvel unlike any other, a complex so vast, so intricate, that it made the pyramids themselves seem small. 12 great courts, 3,000 rooms, half above ground, half below, corridors that twisted, roofs of stone, hieroglyphs, statues, silence, a temple of echoes. But no one has found it, not entirely. Napoleon's expedition to Egypt noted strange foundations near Hawara. In the 1800s, explorer Flinders Petrie excavated part of the site. He found colossal blocks, long corridors, pieces of columns. But nothing matched Herodotus' vision completely. And yet, he believed, we walk now through what remains. The desert floor is cracked, scattered with stones that once bore ceilings. Sand has filled the gaps. Time has worn the edges smooth. But something lingers. The deeper chambers of Hawara are waterlogged. Beneath the visible ruins, submerged stonework hints at something larger, out of reach, yet undeniably there. In recent years, ground-penetrating radar has suggested the presence of voids beneath the surface. But no full excavation has followed, perhaps because the labyrinth is not just a place. It is a symbol of what lies hidden beneath our stories, of the worlds we suspect exist just out of reach, beneath foundations, beneath memory, beneath the dust of interpretation. The labyrinth is possibility, encoded in stone, and there are echoes of it elsewhere. Beneath the pyramids of Giza, rumors speak of tunnels, serapeum chambers cut deep into rock, sealed shafts, water-worn walls, underground boat pits, legends of holes lined with scrolls, guarded by priests, now buried forever. The Egyptian Book of the Dead describes the afterlife as a labyrinth, a twisting, dangerous passage of tests and judgment. Maybe the physical labyrinth mirrored the spiritual one, a place where the living could walk through death and emerge changed. We pause. The air here is dry, but heavy, a stillness that feels like waiting. In our modern rush to explain, to categorize, the idea of a labyrinth resists. It is not built to be understood. It is built to be entered, slowly, with humility. And so we imagine corridors lit by torches, priests moving in silence, walls carved with names lost to language. We imagine scholars tracing steps through holes where time stood still. And we imagine it all buried, by sand, by flood, by choice. The desert is not quick to reveal. It has patience. The labyrinth may yet sleep beneath Hawara, or it may live only in the minds of those who dream backward. Either way, we let the vision breathe. Beneath every great monument, there may be a deeper one. Beneath every known truth, an unknown question. And beneath the feet of history, a silence shaped like a maze, still waiting. Beneath the surface of fields, forests, and cities, there are lines, not of stone or map, but of memory. Roads that once pulsed with life, with sandals, hooves, wheels, and purpose. Roads that no longer lead anywhere, yet still remain. Quiet arteries beneath the skin of the world. We begin high in the Andes. The Capacnan, the great Inca road system, stretched over 24,000 miles. Built without wheels, draft animals, or iron tools, it threaded across mountains, deserts, and valleys. Rope bridges swayed over canyons. Stone stairways climbed through clouds. Couriers, called chasquis, sprinted messages from one outpost to another, like the nervous system of an empire. Today, much of it lies buried. Some stretches are overgrown, swallowed by the Amazon. Others are crumbling, fading beneath villages or terrace farms. But sometimes, in the morning mist, a faint path reemerges, etched into stone, leading nowhere, yet echoing movement. We shift continents, drifting west across the Atlantic and deeper into time. The Roman Vie, their roads, were so well built that some are still used today, paved over by centuries of traffic. Others lie dormant beneath fields or motorways, their gravel beds still resisting weeds. Roman engineers carved the world into order, north to south, empire to empire. And where the roads intersected, cities grew. Beneath the modern cities of Europe, Rome's bones remain, not in ruins alone, but in infrastructure. Straight lines that once marched with legions now hum with cars or lie silently forgotten. And even older paths beckon. In the jungles of Central America, LiDAR technology reveals faint causeways, straight roads connecting Maya cities like Tikal, El Mirador, and Calakmul. Some stretch for miles, perfectly aligned, raised above swampy terrain. Roads made not just for trade, but for ceremony. Movement as ritual. Beneath the sands of the Sahara, lost caravan trails shimmer faintly in satellite images. Ancient routes once walked by salt traders, gold merchants, pilgrims. Long before borders, before maps, the desert had memory. Even the sea hides ancient tracks. Off the coast of Britain, Doggerland, a lost land now submerged, once held paths trodden by Mesolithic hunters. Beneath the waves, remnants of wooden trackways and hunting tools lie buried in silt. Roads not made of stone, but of need and return. All roads, in time, become memory. We think of what it means to build a road, not merely to connect places, but to declare intention. A road says, we were here, we moved, we mattered. And what are the ones that vanish? Sometimes they vanish through neglect, sometimes through conquest. Sometimes nature gently folds them back into herself, vines and moss, erosion and dust. But their imprint lingers. We walk these quiet corridors with care. There is poetry in the forgotten route, in the path that once led somewhere important and now leads only to silence. There is comfort in knowing that movement endures even after the feet are gone. We pause beside a broken cobble path, half buried in leaves. A lone stone mile marker leans to one side. No one comes this way anymore. But once, it was vital. Once, it was full of sound, of traders, families, stories. Now it hums beneath the dust, like a breath held forever. Some roads vanish, but not completely. They wait, for memory, for silence, for you. In the heart of Delhi, surrounded by the remnants of ancient dynasties, stands a quiet anomaly. It is not gold, or marble, or a towering monument, but a single pillar of iron, weathered by 16 centuries of monsoons, dust, sun, and time, and yet it refuses to rust. We begin here. The iron pillar of Delhi rises over 20 feet, unassuming in its simplicity. It stands in the cut complex, older than the moss around it, predating Islamic rule in India. Historians attribute it to the Gupta Empire around the 4th century CE. An inscription honors King Chandragupta II. But the words fade in comparison to what the metal does not do: corrode. In a world where iron yields easily to air and water, this pillar stands untouched. Not coated in modern paint, not sealed in glass, simply standing, enduring. We move closer, slowly. Its surface is dark, smooth in places from centuries of touch. Legends swirl around it, that it was forged by ancient sages, that it marks the axis of the world, that whoever can encircle with their arms will have their wish granted. But behind the myth is the metal and the mystery. Metallurgists have studied it for decades. The iron contains phosphorus, but almost no sulfur or manganese. It was forged using ancient methods, possibly charcoal-fueled furnaces, and slowly hammered into shape. A thin layer of crystalline iron hydrogen phosphate has formed on the surface, creating a protective barrier. But even with science, the outcome feels like luck. Our design, our something both older and deeper. We drift to other places. In India, the iron pillar shows similar resistance. In Egypt, the statue of Pharaoh Ramesses II, made of rose granite, has stood in open air for 3,000 years, resisting time with silent confidence. In Syria, bronze statues still gleam after millennia beneath desert sands. Why do some objects remain whole, while others crumble in a generation? We reflect on decay, and its absence. Rust, mold, erosion, these are the language of time. We expect things to fade, to weaken, and when they don't, we pause. A rustless artifact feels like a frozen thought, a decision that refuses to surrender to nature's slow hand. What is preservation, if not memory made durable? We touch the iron, figuratively, reverently. It is not just a pillar, it is persistence. A message written not in language, but in resistance. It tells us that intention can endure, that not everything vanishes. And we wonder, what did the makers know? Maybe it was skill, maybe chance, or maybe a forgotten science, tuned to harmony between material and world. A knowledge lost not through destruction, but through quiet disuse, a silence deeper than forgetting. Around the iron pillar, modern air thickens with traffic and noise. But within its metal, stillness remains. 1,000 storms have passed. Empires have risen, languages changed, faiths transformed, but the iron holds. We end not with an answer, but with a touch of awe. In a corroding world, there are things that do not rust. They wait, whole. They remind us that some intentions, if forged with care, last longer than we dare imagine. The face is a final story. Across time and continent, civilizations have covered the faces of the dead with metal, stone, paint, and precious gems. Not to conceal, but to preserve, to transform, to offer the dead a second face, one that would not decay, one that could meet the gods, or eternity, without flinching. We begin in Mycenae. The gold death mask of Agamemnon, though likely not his, rests in a museum, but once lay pressed over the face of a powerful man in a tomb carved from rock. Its hammered gold is thin, but deliberate, a full beard, closed eyes, a mouth resting as if between breath and silence. The Mycenaeans believed the mask preserved identity into the afterlife. Not just wealth, but memory made visible. We travel east to Egypt. Hey, death masks were more than remembrance. They were transformation. The funerary mask of Tutankhamun, perhaps the most iconic, is a masterpiece of gold, lapis lazuli, and inlaid stones. Its calm expression does not mourn, but declares divinity. The boy king became Osiris. The mask, a gateway, not just to another world, but to godhood. Other mummies bore painted faces, portraits on wood, remarkably lifelike. The famed mummy portraits, soft eyes, arched brows, hints of clothing or jewelry. These weren't stylized. They were real, human. Roman Egyptians who wished to be remembered not in abstraction, but in likeness. We move to the Americas. In the Maya world, jade masks adorned noble burials. The Maya believed jade symbolized life force and breath. Covering the face, and it was an act of spiritual preservation. In Teotihuacan, obsidian and serpentine masks, sometimes without features, seem more symbolic, not of the person, but of the cosmos they were returning to. Across the ocean, in ancient China, we find bronze ritual masks with exaggerated eyes and ears, perhaps more divine than human. Not worn in life, but placed in tombs, their blank stares aimed at something beyond our reach. And in the Andes, the Moche civilization created portrait vessels, ceramic jugs shaped into realistic faces, sometimes depicting the dead, each one unique, not idealized, not generic, real people remembered in clay. What ties all these together? The human face and the ache to preserve it. In death, we lose voice, breath, presence. But perhaps we don't have to lose the face. Perhaps shaping it into metal, stone, or pigment is our way of saying, you were here. You look like this. You mattered. There's tenderness in this act, even reverence. A mask, after all, is not only for hiding, it's also for revealing. These funerary masks reveal what the living hope for the dead, that they would be known, safe, honored, that the features etched by life would not vanish with it. We slow down beside a glass case, somewhere in a quiet museum. Behind it, a face of gold, pressed flat with time. We can still see the shape of the nose, the curve of the lips, closed eyes that once looked on a world that has vanished. And yet, somehow, they still look at us. In that moment, death feels less like disappearance, and more like continuity, carried not by the body, but by the will to remember. To be remembered in metal is no small thing. It means someone believed memory could be shaped, that identity could survive if carefully held, that the face, the vessel of words, of expression, of time, could live on even in silence. And so they made masks and left them for us. On the edge of land where sea meets soil, ancient hands once reached down, not for gold, not for stone, but for shells. Fragile, spiraled, luminous, carved not by tools, but by tide. And yet, these small remnants of the ocean carried power that echoed far beyond the shore. Across cultures, shells were more than decoration. They were language. They were currency. They were memory. Smoothed by water, gathered with intention, placed where meaning was needed. In Africa, cowrie shells adorn the bodies of the living and the dead. Their gleaming white surfaces symbolize fertility, protection, and spiritual wealth. Worn as jewelry, sewn into clothing, or buried with the departed, cowries connected earthly life to the realm of ancestors. They were also used as currency, a shimmering medium of exchange that moved through hands, villages, and time. In India and Southeast Asia, conch shells, shankar, was sacred. Blown like trumpets in temples, they announced ritual beginnings and summoned the divine. Their spiral forms were seen as cosmic, echoing creation itself, the turning of the universe inward and outward. In Buddhist tradition, the sound of the conch spread truth and harmony across the land. In the Americas, Mesoamerican civilizations embedded shells into architecture. In Teotihuacan, seashells have been found high in the mountains, proof of long trade networks and sacred offerings. The Maya carved shell into ear spools, pendants, and ritual items. Their delicate etchings told stories of gods, of rain, of the underworld. Shells, pulled from the sea, became tools to speak to the sky. In the Pacific, island peoples built with shell. Entire foundations of sacred structures were layered with coral and mollusk. Even in places where stone was scarce, shell stood in its place, not as weakness, but as resilience drawn from ocean memory. Some cultures believed shells could carry voices. Hollow whelks held close to the ear seemed to whisper not only the sea, but something older. In burial sites, shells were placed near heads or chests, as if to let the dead listen or speak one last time. And there is symbolism, too, in the forms. The spiral, the curve, the closed mouth of the mollusk that once lived within. Shells are absence turned to form, life departed, but leaving behind a trace so perfect it begged reverence. Even today, we hold them gently. In certain ancient texts, shells are said to mark passage, a symbol of journeys taken, both physical and spiritual. Along the Camino de Santiago, pilgrims still wear scallop shells, a tradition stretching back centuries. The shell is not just a sign of travel, but of transformation. We drift through ruins near the sea, small forgotten dwellings, stones softened by salt wind. And there, caught between crumbling walls, we find the glint of something delicate. A cowrie, a broken whelk, fossilized now, fragile still. They do not shout like statues or towers. They do not last as long as stone, but in their vulnerability, there is something sacred, a quietness that speaks only if you pause to listen. Shells are breath made solid, time curled into beauty. Currency once, story always, and they remain, still nestled in the corners of altars, still stitched into ancient fabric, still lying in the earth, waiting for someone to find them. And here again the echo of a coastline long vanished. Not every language is written in letters. Some, like the language of shells, are written in spiral, in shine, in the memory of waves, and in silence, far beneath the surface of the earth, where the sun has never touched and wind cannot reach. Ancient stories wait in silence. The caves of Lascaux, Altamira, and Chauvet are not accidental shelters or forgotten hideaways. They are something deeper, both physically and spiritually. They are sanctuaries of shadow, carved not for survival but for meaning. And as we descend, lantern light flickering along walls of stone, we begin to understand that these places were made not to be lived in, but to be entered with reverence. The air grows still, damp, close. The sound of our own breathing becomes louder, our footsteps softer, absorbed by centuries of quiet. And then, as the light reaches the walls, a revelation. Bison, horses, deer leaping mid-stride, mammoths etched in ochre and charcoal, hundreds of animals, moving in frozen rhythm, drawn by hands that lived 15,000 to 30,000 years ago, painted not on the cave entrance where light might fall, but deep within, in total darkness. Why? Perhaps they were rites, perhaps myths, perhaps a prayer to the creatures that gave them food and fur and bone, perhaps the beginning of art, or memory, or dream. The Chauvet Cave in France holds some of the oldest and most detailed prehistoric art known. Lions with alert eyes, rhinos charging, a horse so delicately shaded it feels as if it might blink. In Altamira, in Spain, the ceiling swells with red bison, massive, muscular, full of motion. And in Lascaux, a hole of bulls spirals into mystery, their horns curving in impossible perspective. But none of this was for decoration. The people who made these had no galleries, no books, no written records. These caves were their canvas and their cathedral. To crawl into darkness, carrying a flickering flame and crushed pigments, to paint not for others to see but for something deeper. That is a sacred act. There are no signs of daily life in these caves. No fire pits. No bones scattered on the ground. They were not homes. They were offerings. And the act of entering them even now carries that same quiet. Some believe these caves were portals into other realms, other consciousnesses. That the echoing chambers and play of light and shadow induce a trance, a dream state where spirit and symbol intertwined. The flicker of torchlight makes the animals move, dance. The walls breathe. And still, after all these years, the paintings remain. Some sealed off to preserve them, some fading slowly with time. But all of them, impossibly, still here. The darkness remembers. It holds the shape of each hand that trace a back, shaded belly, press a palm against stone to leave a negative space, a signature in reverse. Small hands, big ones, adults and children, families, perhaps entering the cave together to mark what mattered, not with words, but with pigment and presence. And as we sit in the silence, the modern world falls away. There is no time here, only pulse, only breath, the breath of the animal, the breath of the artist, the breath of the cave itself. Above ground, empires have risen and fallen, languages born and forgotten, religions invented, rewritten, erased. But here, nothing moves, nothing decays. What was sacred remains sacred. We do not need to understand the meaning to feel it. We do not need to explain to be moved. We only need to sit quietly as the ancient ones once did. Let the stillness settle. Let the walls speak in shape and shadow. Let the darkness remember. In the warm hush of ruins, where columns stand broken and walls crumble into dust, there are still places where the past shines back at us, not through grand statues or golden thrones, but beneath our feet. At Knossos in Crete and Persepolis in Iran, the polished stone floors of forgotten palaces remain intact, smooth as mirrors, worn by centuries of footsteps. We begin with Knossos, the Minoan palace said to be the home of the labyrinth and its mythical Minotaur. But here, there is no monster, only silence, and stone. Floors that once held the rhythm of bare feet in dance, the shuffle of robes, the sandaled stride of messengers hurrying through courtyards flooded with Mediterranean sun. These were not merely piles of stone. They were stages. The luster of the floors, still faintly reflecting light, speaks of ceremony, of precision, of care. We imagine the soft echo of sandals slapping polished slabs, the gentle scraping of a scribe's stool, the voice of a priestess rising into the rafters, caught by the acoustics of space shaped for sound. How much thought went into the way the whole would breathe. And then we walk east, to Persepolis, ceremonial capital of the Achaemenid Empire. Its grand halls still hold the shadows of Darius and Xerxes, even if only through faint carvings and surviving thresholds. But below, the floors remain. Wide panels of stone, arranged with deliberate geometry. In some places, you can see the fine joins where slabs meet without mortar, still locked tight after millennia. Hey, we imagine the quiet procession of visitors from distant lands, offering tribute in measured steps. We hear the weight of silence between words, the dignity of movement, a place where every footstep once meant something. Now, those steps are gone, but the echo they left in stone remains. To walk on these ancient surfaces is not to visit a ruin. It is to touch time, to feel, even faintly, what it means to be one of many who have passed this way. Every stone bears the memory of weight, of warmth, of the world moving forward. And it makes us wonder, what sound did laughter make in these halls? How did sunlight catch the floor in the late afternoon? Did a child ever slip and laugh? Did someone kneel and whisper secrets to the ground? When we look for the past, we often look up to statues, arches, towers. But sometimes it is underfoot, smooth, unbroken, burnished by time and by living. These floors were built not just to hold weight, but to hold meaning. The polish hasn't faded, not entirely, and in it, we glimpse the shine of lives long gone. Not in glory, not in myth, just in movement. And so we walk slowly, step by step, feeling the echo rise. At high altitudes above Cusco, where cloud brush the Andean peaks and the wind carries a deep and ancient hush, the stones of Sacsayhuaman rest in quiet strength. Towering blocks, some the size of small trucks, others larger still, press against one another with such precision that not even a blade of grass slips between them. And yet, no mortar holds them in place. These are cyclopean walls, a term used by archaeologists to describe the seemingly impossible, structures so massive, so finely joined, that legend once attributed them to giants. But these walls were not the work of myth. They were laid by hands, by eyes that could measure with uncanny instinct, by minds that understood the weight and will of stone. We drift along the base of these fortifications, our fingers tracing the joins. Each stone is a puzzle piece, no two alike, yet all fitting together with exacting grace. Their edges curve and slot into one another like ancient geometry made tactile. They are not stacked in haste. They are composed, as if the builders knew they were writing something that must endure. Earthquakes have shaken the Andes again and again. Colonial structures nearby have collapsed, rebuilt, and collapsed again. Yet these ancient walls remain. Solid, serene, still. And so we wonder, how were they moved? How were they lifted and set? There are no pulleys or iron tools preserved. No written manuals, no surviving blueprints. Just a result, an architecture so calm in its confidence that it feels as if the mountain itself decided to rearrange its bones. Other sites whisper the same mystery. The walls of Ollantaytambo, the fortresses of Alatri in Italy, the quiet remnants of Hattusa in Turkey, all places where stone meets stone with an intimacy that defies erosion. They do not crack apart. They do not lean with time. They breathe together. There is something humble in this kind of endurance. These stones do not reach upward like spires or stretch across rivers like bridges. They stand, and they stay, quiet companions to the centuries. We step back. We look again. There is no flourish, no embellishment, just presence, immense, unwavering, and unmoved. What does it mean to build something meant to last forever? Perhaps it is not about strength, but fit. Not about domination, but understanding. To know a stone well enough to carve it just so, to let it rest where it wants to, that is a form of listening few remember how to do. The walls remain, not in defiance, but in stillness. And when the wind moves over them, it sounds like breath, not of the builders, but of the mountain itself. At the edge of the world, where the earth falls away into cloud and wind, the ancients left altars. They are not large. Some are little more than a circle of stones, a carved hollow in the rock, or a slab blackened by time and weather. But their placement tells us everything. Always at the height of land, on cliffs, plateaus, windswept ridges, places where breath becomes thinner and the sky draws near. We walk slowly among them. In the Andes, where the Inca built sacred ushness on high passes. In the Himalayas, where stone canes still catch prayer flags fluttering with every gust. In the Scottish Highlands, where Bronze Age cairns crumble softly into moss. In all these places, the same reverence hangs in the air. It is the reverence of openness. There are no roofs here, no walls to hold prayers in. These altars face the elements without flinching, built to let offering rise, smoke spiral, ashes scatter, and thoughts dissolve. We pause beside a hollow carved in the granite ledge, half filled with rainwater. Perhaps it once held cornmeal, or blood, or simply the quiet gaze of a supplicant. Perhaps someone knelt here 5,000 years ago and whispered into the wind, knowing no echo would return. There's something delicate in that kind of faith. To build a sacred space where nothing shelters it. To give without guarantee. To trust that wind can carry intention the way rivers carry stones. Slowly, eventually, and without need of reply. We move higher. The wind thickens. Lichens paint the stone in pale reds and greens, softening the hard edges of construction. Flowers grow in cracks. The ancient and the wild live side by side here, untouched by fences or preservation. Some altars still show traces of their rituals. Scorched stones, bone fragments, charcoal. Others are so old their purpose is unreadable, but the placement still sings. Always at a point of view, always where the body must pause before the vastness. These are places of letting go. We think of the hands that placed these stones. Were they trembling? Hopeful? Were they letting go of grief, or calling for rain, or simply marking a spot where silence felt sacred? And across time, these altars remain, not because of their size, but because they were made in places that refuse to be forgotten, because the wind remembers everything we give it. Beneath the silence of ice, something sleeps. Across Antarctica and the upper reaches of the Arctic, the frost has held secrets longer than any library. Locked under miles of glacial weight, the earth remembers in layers, snow on snow, silence on silence. And every now and then, a whisper escapes. We begin in Antarctica, where satellite scans and ground-penetrating radar have revealed anomalies, shapes too regular, too angular, too deliberate to ignore. Some lie near the Transantarctic Mountains, half buried beneath blue-white ridges. Others appear under the thickest shells of ice, where no expedition has yet touched. They are not named. No one is sure what they are. But the language of geometry is universal, and something, beneath that silence, speaks in straight lines. We drift north to the permafrost of Siberia and Greenland, where melt reveals fragments, bones, tools, and sometimes entire villages pause in time. Permafrost preserves like a photograph. Even the scent of wood smoke can linger in an ancient hearth. In Inuit stories, there are tales of stone cities under snow, places where spirits still dwell, frozen in motion. Some speak of warm caverns deep beneath the ice, lit by glowing stones, where ancient people fled when the sky turned against them. We do not chase the truth of these stories. We simply follow the feeling they leave behind. Because what is ice, if not memory slowed down? Even now, as the climate shifts and glacier retreat, more shapes emerge, circles, walls, what some claim could be stays. But without rushing, we pause, we consider the strange beauty of not knowing, of letting the mystery sit frozen for a while longer. Perhaps these are remnants of a world before our own. Perhaps they are tricks of geology. Or perhaps the earth simply folds its sacred places in layers of time, ice being the last, most protective skin. We look out across the polar landscape, wind carving ghost trails in the snow. No footsteps linger here, only drift and glimmer, and the quiet sense that something ancient is still listening, deep below. Not lost, only sleeping. The earth is not still. It breathes, it sways, it sinks, and with it, the ancient places rise and fall. Some islands drift like memories across tectonic plates. Others vanish under rising tides, only to reappear in sonar echoes and diver dreams. Hey, archaeology is not frozen. It is tidal. We begin with Yonaguni, off the coast of Japan. Beneath the sea, massive stone terraces rise from the ocean floor. Staircases, right angles, passageways. Some say they are natural. Others see the hand of forgotten builders. But what remains true is this: they are where land used to be. And now, fish swim where footsteps may once have echoed. Far to the west, the lighthouse of Pharos in ancient Alexandria once stood as one of the seven wonders. Earthquakes shook it, tides battered it, and the Mediterranean swallowed its remains. Today, divers find columns and statues scattered across the seabed, a fallen city shifted gently by the sea. We drift through the Pacific, where island chains like Micronesia rise and vanish with the moods of the earth. Nanmadol rests atop coral foundations that seem to float. Some believe entire islands have slipped beneath the waves, leaving only legends behind. Even continents move. Africa presses slowly northward, Italy rises from its fault lines, and the floor of the Atlantic spreads, reshaping coasts imperceptibly. The places we think of as solid, temples, pyramids, paths, all ride this moving skin. We imagine a shrine once built on high ground, now submerged. A stone marker that pointed to the stars, now points into water. A village swallowed not by war or fire, but by the patient hand of the planet itself. There is no malice in this motion, only rhythm. The earth forgets nothing, but it does rearrange. It holds its ancient places lightly, like pages in a wind. And when we find them again, half-buried or salt-worn, we are not reviving them. We are visiting them in a different form. Land shifts, seas rise, ruins relocate. And in that motion, mystery deepens. A coin is a whisper passed from one hand to another, across time, across distance. When we speak of ancient trade, we often imagine ships, caravans, and roads. But sometimes it is the smallest things that speak loudest. A single coin, misplaced or offered, becomes a clue in a quiet web of connection that once stretched farther than we knew. We begin with a Roman coin discovered in a Japanese tomb, a bronze disc far from its empire, found on the edge of another world. Not proof of Roman conquest, but perhaps of curiosity, of something or someone traveling beyond borders we thought were sealed. In Newfoundland, Canada, Viking silver has surfaced in layers of soil untouched by modern settlers. Elant's auxiliary meadow speaks softly of Norsemen who sailed the Atlantic before Columbus. Their coins and rings, their carved weights, hint at trade and touch, a meeting between hemispheres. Across the deserts of India and the markets of East Africa, coins from the Mediterranean world have emerged, marked with emperors long dead, carried by hands now lost to time. They tell of trade, yes, but more contact, of glances exchanged in dusty bazaars, of agreements made without words. On remote Pacific islands, Chinese and Arab coinage have been found buried beneath volcanic ash or tucked in cliffside caves. Not armies, travelers, explorers, drifters with pockets full of round metal stories. We do not chase theories of invasion. We let the coins speak on their own. These were not empires clashing. These were paths crossing. Quiet moments, a transaction, a gift, a lost trinket, now echoing louder than monuments. Each coin is a point on a hidden map, each one a soft reminder the world was never disconnected. Long before planes or satellite signals, people found each other, on foot, by sail, through curiosity. Not everything left behind is broken stone. Sometimes it is a glint of bronze in sand, the shine of silver in mud, a story shaped in a circle, passed from palm to palm, asking no questions, but offering a timeless presence. These coins do not prove conquest. They whisper of something gentler, connection, and that, perhaps, is the oldest journey of all. Amidst the grandeur of stone temples and towering monuments, it is often the smallest fragments that speak loudest, shards of broken pottery scattered across ancient sites, their edges worn and their colors faded. These potsherds, humble and abundant, are the quiet witnesses of everyday life, the silent storytellers of hands that shaped, fired, and used them long ago. We begin by bending low to the earth. In villages across continents, pots were made from clay dug from nearby riverbanks, mixed with straw or crushed shell, shaped on rudimentary wheels or by hand. Each vessel bore the touch of its maker, the fingerprint pressed into the rim, the uneven curve of a handle, the subtle spiral of a coil built up layer by layer. These were not art pieces but tools, bowls for food, jars for water, pots for cooking. Yet within their function lies beauty. Painted surfaces reveal traces of color and pattern, geometric lines, spirals, symbolic animals, or simple brushstrokes that caught the light in ways that must have pleased their makers. The designs vary wildly, revealing cultural identity, trade influence, and even individual creativity. A pot might tell a story, mark a season, or signify a family. When broken, as most pots inevitably were, the shards were often discarded, or sometimes recycled into tools or construction material. But for archaeologists, these fragments are treasure. They reveal diet through residue analysis. They hint at trade through clay sourcing. They mark change through style evolution. At sites like Çatalhöyük in Turkey, vast numbers of potsherds have been found, each layer telling of centuries of domestic life. In the American Southwest, ancestral Puebloan pottery fragments illustrate both everyday use and ritual significance. Across the Nile, Egyptian pottery fragments reveal the rhythms of food preparation and storage that sustain great civilizations. We linger over the details. The smooth curve of a rim, worn thin by use. The scorch marks on the base, evidence of fire. The layered paint, flaked but still visible. A child's handprint caught in clay before firing, frozen for millennia. These shards are echoes of lives not recorded in stone or scroll. Mothers stirring stew, fathers carrying water, children learning to cook. The mundane moments that build the fabric of civilization. And there's intimacy here. The pots were touched countless times. They were part of daily routines, family gatherings, and sacred rites. They survived meal after meal, feast after feast, until one day they broke, quietly, unremarked. And yet, in their fragments, they hold a kind of immortality. We hold them in imagination. We feel the roughness of clay, the coolness of painted glaze, the lightness of a shard in the hand. These broken pieces connect us to the past in a way few grand monuments can. They speak softly, but their message is clear. History is not only what kings built, but what people lived. And so we listen, to the fired clay, to the painted surface, to the fragments scattered beneath the dust. The potsherds tell a presence, of continuity, of hands that made, used, and finally left behind a trace, not in words, but in earth and fire. And in that trace, a quiet beauty endures. In the vast expanse of Central Asia, where the desert meets sky and endless horizons, lie cities once vibrant with life, now quiet, empty, and embraced by sand. Merv, Samarkand, Naya, names that echo the Great Silk Road, the arteries of ancient trade, culture, and exchange. These are ghost cities, places where bustling markets have fallen silent, caravans no longer wind through streets, and time has settled softly over stone and dust. We begin in Merv, in present-day Turkmenistan, once one of the largest cities in the world, a crossroads where east met west. At its height, Merv was a shimmering oasis, full of mosques, libraries, and caravanserais. The city's walls once sheltered thousands, its streets thrummed with merchants, scholars, and travelers. But now, only the skeleton remains, crumbling fortifications, wind-swept plazas, and the faint outline of ancient canals. We walk slowly down wide avenues paved in stone, now fractured and covered with desert sands. Gateways stand partially collapsed, their arches cracked but still holding the sky. The wind whistles through empty doorways. Shadows lengthen over ruined minarets and silent baths. Further east, Samarkand in Uzbekistan carries a different tale. Unlike Merv's ruins, parts of Samarkand still pulse with life, a living city laid atop its history. But beyond the vibrant bazaars and blue-tiled mosques lie the remnants of earlier Samarkand, forgotten palaces and tombs covered in dust, whispering of empires that rose and fell. Here, the past and present entwine, a bridge across centuries. To the north, in the Taklamakan Desert, the city of Naya sleeps beneath sand and salt flats. Archaeologists uncovered its ruins buried beneath dunes, walls of mud brick, painted frescoes, and fragments of daily life frozen in time. Naya was once a vibrant Silk Road hub, a place of trade and culture in a harsh landscape. Now, it waits beneath the earth, preserved by desolation. These ghost cities tell stories beyond conquest or collapse. They speak of change, of shifting trade routes, environmental transformation, and the ebb and flow of human settlement. Where rivers dried, caravans diverted, or empires fractured, cities emptied slowly, leaving behind traces of the wind to gather. We pause at caravanserais, ancient inn for travelers, imagining the clatter of hooves, the murmur of languages, the crackle of fires under starry skies. These were places of exchange, not just of goods, but of ideas, faith, and art. They connected worlds. Now, the fires are out. The caravans have moved on, and the cities sleep. But in their silence, they hold presence. Ruins do not simply vanish. They transform. Stone becomes dust. Walls become contours in the landscape. Memory becomes myth. We walk their empty streets as ghosts of footsteps rise, not specters, but echoes. Echoes of lives lived in trade and worship, in fear and hope, in struggle and celebration. Central Asia's ghost cities remind us that history is not fixed. It moves, like the shifting sand that cover these ruins. And sometimes, the greatest stories are those whispered by silence. We leave the city gates behind, carrying their quiet weight. The sun sets, the desert wind rises, and beneath the vast sky, the ghost cities of Central Asia endure, not in stone alone, but in the enduring breath of time itself. Long before the age of compasses, before needles floated atop water or spun within brass housings, ancient peoples found ways to find their way, not just across land or sea, but through the unseen currents of spirit and time. Their tools were simple, magnetic lodestones, carefully placed stones, bronze discs, yet their understanding were profound, blending observation, ritual, and the natural world into navigation both physical and metaphysical. We begin with lodestones, natural magnets. Found in the earth, lodestones have fascinated humans for millennia. Ancient texts from China and Greece mention them, their mysterious ability to attract iron, to align with the stars. In China, as early as the Han Dynasty, lodestones were used for geomancy, feng shui, to align buildings and tombs in harmony with the earth's energy. They were not just tools, but talismans, mediators between heaven and earth. Across the Mediterranean, philosophers noted the curious properties of magnetite. Some speculated it was alive, with spirit. Others used it in primitive compasses, placing iron needles on water surfaces, watching them align north-south. Though these devices were not widely adopted for navigation until centuries later, they hinted at a slow awakening to Earth's magnetic whispers. Bronze discs and engraved stones suggest another dimension. Archaeological sites reveal temple orientations aligned with cardinal points or celestial events. At sites like Nabta Playa in Egypt or Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, stones are placed with remarkable precision, not randomly, but to capture the movement of sun, moon, and stars. These alignments serve purposes beyond calendars. They were guides, markers on the path between Earth and cosmos. Navigation in ancient times was a dance of senses, the position of the sun at dawn, the direction of prevailing winds, the flight of birds, and the pulse of the earth itself. The sky was a map, and the land, a compass rose etched in stone. But navigation was more than survival. It was spiritual. The journey mattered not just for reaching a destination, but for transformation. Pilgrims, traders, shamans, they moved with intention. Their paths were rituals. Their directions, prayers. We meditate on the blending of practical and sacred. A stone aligned to true north might also point to the dwelling of spirits. A lodestone might guide a sailor not only through storm, but through uncertainty. To hold a compass was to hold a fragment of the divine order. This understanding shaped architecture, ritual, and myth. Temples faced east to greet the rising sun. Paths wound on the ley lines. Directions held meaning, north as death, south as life, east as rebirth, west as rest. Even myths speak of direction as a metaphor, journeys inward and outward, up and down, from darkness to light. We imagine ancient travelers pausing to read the sky and ground, using stones, stars, and scents to find their way. They did not rely on instruments alone. They trusted intuition, memory, and the unseen forces that surrounded them. Their compasses were not just metal, but mind and spirit. And so, in the stillness, We see navigation in you, not as mere calculation, but as connection. Not just moving across space, but moving within. The compass before the compass was a language of alignment, of body, earth, and cosmos. It guided more than footsteps. It guided hearts. And perhaps, if we listen closely, it still does. In the hushed corridors of archaeological museums, beneath the soft glow of carefully placed lights, lie objects heavy with story, helmets dented and dulled, breastplates etched with the scars of time, shields bearing marks of countless blows. These are not mere artifacts. They are whispers of war, echoes of moments before battle, and a quiet that followed long after swords fell silent. We begin by standing before a helmet. Its metal is worn, edges chipped. A patina of rust and age coats its surface, but beneath lies craftsmanship, the forging of iron or bronze, shaped not only for protection, but for identity. The crest, the decorations, the engravings, all speak of the warrior who wore it, a man or woman who once lifted it, who once tightened the straps, who once looked out across a field thick with tension. Nearby, breastplates lie in solemn stillness. Some are shaped smooth, meant to deflect, others layered with scale or chainmail, designed to balance defense and movement. Each dent, each scratch, is a silent testimony, not to violence alone, but to survival, to courage, to fear. These pieces were more than armor. They were extensions of the body, the will to endure. Shields, round or rectangular, rest propped against walls or displayed flat. Their surfaces bear traces of paint, patterns faded but visible. Symbols meant to intimidate enemies or protect spirits. The wood beneath is cracked, the leather straps frayed. They are the barriers between life and death, between chaos and order. Walking these halls, we imagine the hands that made these objects. Blacksmiths hammering metal beside roaring fires. Artisans engraving symbols that held meaning beyond the visible. Warriors preparing for dawn, donning these shields and helmets as much for the weight of tradition as for the battle ahead. And we imagine the moments before conflict, the breath held tight, the heart beating fast, the silence thick with anticipation. Armor clinks softly, a ritual sound. The world narrows to the edge of a blade, the flash of sun on steel. But the armor also carries a stillness after. When the battle ends, when the field quiets, when those who survived lay down their weapons and remember, in these objects, time is folded. They speak of strength and vulnerability, of the human need to protect not just body, but identity, of the paradox that what is worn to guard life is also the trace of death. Some armor tells stories of conquest, others of defense. Some belong to champions, others to unknown foot soldiers, but all carry the weight of hands that crafted, that grasped, that finally let go. We linger before a helmet from ancient Greece, its cheek guards worn smooth. Beside it, a breastplate from a Roman legionnaire, etched with scenes of battle and victory. Across the room, a shield from a Celtic warrior, adorned with spirals and knots, still vibrant beneath the layers of dust. Each piece invites us to listen, not just to tales of war, but to the human experience beneath, courage and fear, duty and doubt, the instinct to survive and the cost it demands. As we step back, the armor does not feel like cold metal. It feels alive, a vessel of memory, a whisper of lives intertwined with conflict and peace. The holes are silent now, but the stories continue. In the weight of armor, we find the weight of history, heavy, enduring, and deeply human. Beneath an unyielding sun and endless sky, deserts hold their secrets close. Their vast stretches of sand, stone, and dust seem barren to the casual eye, but to those who listen, they whisper stories older than rivers, cities, and empires. These are lands where rain is scarce and time moves slowly, preserving traces that wetter places lose to flood and rot. We begin with the Nazca lines of Peru, vast geoglyphs etched into the desert floor, visible only from above. Shapes of birds, monkeys, and spirals stretch across miles of arid earth, their lines precise and unbroken despite centuries of wind. The dry desert protects these ancient drawings, allowing them to survive where rain would wash them away. The purpose of the Nazca lines remains a mystery. Were they paths for ritual processions? Star maps? Messages to the gods? Whatever their intent, they remind us that the desert is not empty, it is canvas and archive. We shift our gaze eastward, across the deserts of Central Asia. Along the ancient Silk Road, stations and caravanserais once thrived amid shifting sands. Now, many lie buried beneath dunes or faded beneath the relentless sun. The remnants of walls, foundations, and pathways peek through sparse vegetation or stand as lone pillars against the sky. In the Taklamakan desert, satellites have revealed ghost towns swallowed by sand. Their streets appear and disappear with a movement of light and shadow, vanishing at noon, re-emerging at dusk. The desert plays with perception, folding history into its folds. Desert preserve in silence. Where water would cause decay, heat and dryness act as protectors. Organic materials like textiles, wood, and even human remains have been found remarkably intact beneath dry sands. The dryness halts rot. The absence of rain preserves memory. We walk gently across these lands, feeling the crunch of gravel and dust underfoot. The sun blazes overhead, yet the desert holds cool pockets of shade and quiet. In this vastness, movement slows. Time seems to fold. And with time, stories come forward. We consider the caravan routes, how traders and pilgrims navigated these harsh lands, guided by stars and stories, water wells and waypoints. Every footstep mattered. Every shadow offered rest. The desert is both guardian and eraser. It keeps the secrets we seek, but also shifts them beneath sand and stone. It is a landscape of patience, where what is lost may return, just as what is found may soon vanish. At night, the desert sky unfolds in brilliant stars, offering navigation and hope. The cool air hums softly with ancient breath. We pause to listen. The desert is not silent. It speaks in the shifting sands, the stillness of stone, and the long shadows that stretch as the sun dips below the horizon. It holds history not as a fixed monument, but as a living, breathing memory. And we are its guests, walking softly across its surface, mindful that beneath our feet lie stories written not in ink, but in dust and time. The desert does not forget. It only waits. In the quiet spaces between known histories lie voices still locked in mystery, scripts etched, painted, or carved, whose meanings remain tantalizingly out of reach. They are not simply words lost to time. They are puzzles of human thought and culture, humming just beyond our grasp. Rongo Rongo, the Indus script, Linear A, each a testament to civilizations whose stories wait patiently to be heard. We begin on Easter Island, where the enigmatic Rongo Rongo script adorns wooden tablets, carved with intricate glyphs. Despite decades of study, no definitive translation exists. The symbols loop and spiral, resembling birds, plants, and abstract forms, as if a language danced between image and sound. Some scholars suggest it was a calendar or chant. Others believe it was a record of lineage or ritual. But the voice remains mute, or rather, waiting. Across the Indian subcontinent, the Indus script presents a similar enigma. Found on seals, pottery, and amulets from the ancient Indus Valley civilization, the script's brief inscriptions defy pattern. Their signs are consistent but untranslatable. Was it a system of trade, a spiritual lexicon, or something lost entirely? The seals depict animals, gods, and symbols, each a fragment of a world half-remembered. Farther east, on the island of Crete, Linear A challenges archaeologists and linguists alike. Predating the more familiar Linear B, which we know was used in Mycenaean Greek, Linear A remains undeciphered. Its symbols suggest administration, ritual, and economy, but the language behind the signs is not Greek, but something else, now silent. These scripts share a common thread. They speak of complexity, of record-keeping, of communication. Yet they resist our desire to decode. They remind us that not every language is ours to understand, that some histories are closed books, folded gently away. We do not chase translation here. Instead, we listen to the silence. We imagine scribes pressing reed against clay, or carving into wood, or stamping seals in soft stone. We picture communities gathering to record, to share, to remember, and we honor the gaps as much as the signs. There is a strange beauty in this unknown, a hum just beyond sound. Like a melody half-remembered, a dream fading upon waking. These scripts are more than puzzles. They are invitations to accept that some stories belong to others, to recognize the limits of our knowledge, to sit with mystery without rushing to solve. In the quiet, we find respect. And in that respect, connection. For these undeciphered scripts are not just barriers. They are bridges, reminding us of the vastness of human expression, the diversity of thought, and the depth of history still waiting beneath the surface. They whisper to us across time, not understand me, but remember me. And in that gentle call, we find a shared humanity, silent but present, humming just beyond our reach. Across the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, where horizons stretch endlessly and islands appear like distant dreams, ancient Polynesians sail without maps, compasses, or written charts. Instead, they carried knowledge in their bodies and minds, a quiet genius woven from stars, waves, wind, and birds. They navigated not with paper, but with presence. The directions they followed were never lost. We begin with the stars. The night sky over the Pacific is a celestial map, constellations rising and setting in predictable rhythms. Polynesian navigators memorized star paths, knowing which stars marked their islands, which guided them across open water. Each star's rising point was a direction, each cluster a waypoint. They read the heavens as we read a book, word by word, pattern by pattern. But navigation was more than stars. The ocean itself spoke. Skilled wayfinders observed wave patterns, swells reflected and refracted by islands, currents flowing beneath the surface, and the dance of ocean tides. They felt the subtle changes in the water beneath their canoes, reading the language of waves like scripture. Certain patterns hinted at land beyond the horizon, others warned of reefs or storms. Birds, too, were guides. Seabirds travel far from land but return regularly. The presence of certain birds flying in specific directions at dawn or dusk told navigators which way to steer. The flight paths were nature's compass, living markers in an open world. This knowledge was passed orally and experientially. No written maps charted these voyages. Instead, knowledge lived in chants, stories, and practice, learned over years, passed down through generations. Navigation was a sacred art, entwined with culture and identity. Each journey was both physical and spiritual, a dialogue between human and nature. We reflect on this quiet genius. In a world obsessed with technology and records, the Polynesians remind us that understanding can be embodied, intuitive, and holistic. That connection with environment, observation, and memory can guide even across thousands of miles of empty sea. They sailed not just to explore, but to connect islands, people, and stories woven across the Pacific like threads in a vast tapestry. Their directions were never lost because they were not just routes on maps, but relationships with sky, sea, and life. We imagine a canoe cutting through dawn mist, a navigator standing steady, eyes lifted to stars, hands sensing waves, ears listening to birdsong. A moment where knowledge, place, and spirit align. No paper, no compass, no modern tools, only presence. And in that presence, mastery. The directions they follow continue to inspire, reminding us that navigation is not merely movement, but mindfulness, a way of being, and a way of belonging. In the heart of ancient temples, where stone meets sky and shadows gather in quiet reverence, a hidden world unfolds, one shaped not only by sight but by sound. From the Grand Pyramid of Chichen Itza in Mexico to the megalithic temples of Malta, footsteps, voices, and music once moved through spaces crafted with uncanny acoustics. These are places where physics and sacred geometry intertwine, where echoes do more than reflect, they transform. We begin at Chichen Itza, where the temple of Kukulkan rises in stepped grandeur. Hey, a clap at the base of the stage produces a sound that mimics the call of the Quetzal bird, sacred to the Maya. This isn't accident. The pyramid design channels sound waves along its edges, creating an echo shaped by the geometry of stone and air. The architecture becomes a living instrument, blending nature, belief, and human ingenuity. Across the ocean, the temples of Malta reveal another acoustic marvel. In places like the Hypogeum of Al-Saflieni, an underground sanctuary carved from limestone, sound behaves strangely. A whisper in one chamber can be heard clearly meters away, while other sounds fade into silence. The chambers resonate with frequencies that some believe induce trance or ritual states. The builders, working thousands of years ago, shaped not just space but sound itself. This merging of stone and sound is a realm of acoustic archaeology, a field that studies how ancient peoples manipulated their environments to create specific auditory effects. It reveals an understanding of waves, resonance, and reflection long before modern science could explain them. We walk softly through these temples, listening. The stone walls absorb some sounds, reflect others. The shape of a chamber alters tone and volume. The placement of openings guides breath and voice. It is architecture that speaks back. In cultures worldwide, sound was sacred. Chanting, drumming, singing. These were not just rituals but acts that connected the physical and spiritual worlds. Temples became instruments for these expressions, amplifying meaning and presence. At sites in India, Egypt, and Peru, similar phenomena appear. Circular chambers echo song. Corridors channel footsteps. Even natural caves were used for their acoustic properties. We imagine priests and pilgrims moving through these spaces, their voices weaving with stone. Sound shaping ceremony, ceremony shaping sound. And beyond ritual, these acoustics may have served practical purposes. Communication across vast complexes, marking time through echoes, or controlling energy flow in sacred spaces. The science is precise, yet the experience is mystical. We close our eyes and clap softly. The echo returns, not merely repetition, but transformation. A reminder that the ancient world was tuned not just to the stars, but to the vibrations beneath our feet. And in that vibration, the past whispers. The echoes beneath the temples are not just sounds. They are stories. They are prayers carried on waves. They are the breath of civilization speaking across time. We listen. We feel. We remember. And in the silence between echoes, we find connection to the builders, the worshippers, and the sacred geometry that shaped a world beyond stone. Beneath the vast canopy of stars, where the earth breathes softly and ruins rest in quiet dignity, we find ourselves at journey's end, not with answers, but with reflection. The night sky stretches infinite above, a tapestry woven from countless points of light, each a story both ancient and enduring. Around us lie the echoes of civilizations, their stones softened by time, their voices folded into silence. We pause in this stillness. The ruins, once alive with purpose and presence, now stand as gentle reminders, not of loss, but of continuity. Walls crumble, inscriptions fade, but the earth remembers. It holds what we cannot see, memories woven into soil, dreams pressed beneath stone, the slow pulse of history moving onward. Looking up, the constellations trace patterns unchanged for millennia. They have witnessed empires rise and fall, rivers change course, and mountains erode. They have watched humans build, create, and wonder, and they continue to watch, offering their steady light as a guide, not to solutions, but to presence. Throughout this journey, we have wandered through mysteries, places shaped by hands long gone, secrets embedded in stone, stories whispered in shadow. We have seen wonders that challenge understanding, puzzles that resist explanation. Yet, perhaps the greatest lesson is this: mystery is not a problem to be solved. It is a space to inhabit, to rest within the unknown. There is grace in accepting what we cannot fully grasp. The unanswered questions, the lost knowledge, the silences between stories, they are not failures of understanding, but invitations. Invitations to pause, to listen, to feel the depth beneath surface. In the quiet, we become part of the story, not as conquerors of truth, but as companions in time. We learn that some mysteries do not diminish with explanation. They grow richer. They expand the horizon of wonder. The night air cools. Cricket sings softly. The earth hums beneath our feet. We breathe in the stillness, letting it settle within. As stars wheel overhead, we reflect on what remains. The stones still stand. The sky still turns. And we still wonder. And perhaps that is enough. For in mystery, there is peace. In the unknown, there is room to dream. And in the quiet spaces between past and present, we find a place to rest. Here, beneath the stars, surrounded by the gentle weight of all that was, and all that still is, we say farewell, not to knowledge, but to certainty. Not to story, but to silence. And in that silence, we find belonging.